The abbreviated, shortened, Rosary, Rosarii Abbreviati. First Treatise. From a very ancient manuscript. Take heed, dearest one, that the things which follow are most true for those who understand. The first preparation and foundation of the art is solution, that is, the reduction of the body into water, that is, into quicksilver, and this they called solution, when they said, let that which is hidden in the body of the Magnesia be dissolved, so that it may be reduced to its first matter, to become sulfur and quicksilver, not so that it may revert into water, because our solution is nothing other than that the body return to a moist state, and be resolved into the nature of quicksilver, and that its saltness of sulfur be diminished. For the divine sulfur, abstracted from the two sulfurs, is made when the spirit meets the body. The second preparation is when the water passes into the body, and the one is not dissolved unless the other is coagulated, because the body, conceiving the quicksilver, coagulates it, and is coagulated by it, and becomes earth. This is the word of opinion, of which the philosophers say, water is begotten of earth, because water becomes earth when it is overcome by the qualities of earth, and earth becomes water when it is overcome by the qualities of water, for the solution of the body and the coagulation of the spirit are one operation, and there is made a single brass, to which nothing foreign is added, except that in preparation the superfluities are removed with care. The third preparation, the earth is plowed and watered, and the work is carried out in fire and water by the will of God, and this is the third word of this work. For the philosophers say, earth rots with water and is cleansed, then with God's help, the work must be continually pursued to completion, for the earth does not sprout without frequent watering, and without previous drying, and this is known to boys and to women as well, leading their female plants and fruits to perfection in gardens. Therefore the philosophers have said, the work of nature is nothing other than the work of women and the play of children. And so the body is imbibed as many times as it is dried, for all things must be done with proper weight, and measure, and method. And now the true putrefaction of the philosophers follows, and their putrefaction is nothing other than the mortification of the moist by the dry, because moistness is restrained only by dryness. And although the cold moist flees fire, it is still held fast by dryness, which it cannot escape. For heavy things cannot be drawn upward except with the help of the light, nor can light things be cast down except by the companionship of the heavy, unless with a scorpion. The fourth preparation, nature rejoices with nature, for when nature is gladdened, nature conquers nature, for nature contains nature, follows nature, and embraces it, and by the will of God the work is completed. And this is the fourth truth of this work, and it can be called sublimation or assumption, of which the philosophers say, that very water becomes aerial, when previously it was thickened and coagulated with earth, and this is by the meeting of its like, namely its kin. And therefore nature rejoices and delights with nature, because its containment is its kinship. For the kinship between nature and nature is as great as between adamant and iron, or even greater, for their root is one and not many, and also in power, for the spirit is the mortification of the body, by an imperceptible death. And so nature conquers nature, by mortifying the body and vivifying that which came forth from it radically, and is converted into it, is increased and multiplied, and God draws many from one. And thus nature contains nature, and follows and is completed by nature through the will of Jesus Christ. The fifth preparation, our spirit is the bearer of the soul's virtues, since our brass, like man, has spirit, body, and soul. And this is the fifth truth of this work, of which the philosophers say, its spirit is water, its soul is tincture, its body is earth. The spirit indeed is spirit, and just as the body is the bond of the soul, so the body is fixed, dry, containing spirit and soul. Therefore, the spirit penetrates the body, fixes the spirit into the body, unites the soul, whitens and tinges it. The sixth preparation, it is varied and changed from color to color until it reaches the goal of whiteness and redness. And of this the philosophers say, it is often yellowed, often blackened, often dried and liquefied. Note that the Philosopher's Stone is composed of two natures, one of which is moist, the other dry. And when they are cooked, they become one, because neither leaves the other, and they are called one nature. And as long as the moisture lasts, it blackens, because heat acting on moisture first produces blackness, and acting on dryness produces whiteness, and from whiteness, yellowness, as seen in lead when we make minium. Note that the moisture of our stone is a most sharp vinegar, from which great caution must be taken lest it be converted into vapor through too much fire, and the work be lost. For when the earth is dried, the blackness departs and is whitened. Then the darkness perishes and the moisture is diminished, and the dryness, approaching, takes over its governance, and the vapor penetrates its body, and the spirit is bound in the dry, and then the black will vanish, being deformed, and a bright clear white will result. Then the white woman, if she be wed to a red husband, immediately embraces and unites with him, and then the king crowned with a diadem exclaims, I am the white sun, black and red, and son of whiteness, and man of transformation. And so the philosophers say, cook them until they become black venom, because the more they are cooked, the more they are dissolved and blackened. And the more they are cooked, the more they are dried and whitened. Thirdly, the more they are cooked, the more they are reddened, until they are perfected. In the dissolution, however, the fire should be gentle, in sublimation, moderate, in coagulation, tempered, in whitening, continuous, in reddening, strong. But he who errs in these through ignorance will often lament the failure. The matter, then, whose head is red, feet white, and eyes black, is the magistery. If the triangle is perfected within the quadrangle, then the stone is adorned with honor. The seventh preparation, the blessed stone is multiplied and perfected, when the total of the fixed is fixed with it until it flows. And therefore the philosophers said that the fixed stone should now be made volatile by the method of sublimation, by philosophically joining through the smallest parts, so that all the subtle may be lifted into the vessel, and then be fixed. If this does not happen, add a quantity of the unfixed part so that the sum of the volatile surpasses the fixed, until it is sufficient for its elevation. For if it surpasses the fixed, it will fly, and if it does not, it will flee with the thing. Therefore, what has been lifted must be repeated in that total, again and again, until by this sublimation and congelation the whole is fixed. And when all has been fixed, then repeat the part not fixed, and imbibe as much quantity as before, through your skill, until the whole is elevated. At last, let it again be fixed until it offers easy fusion like wax, and be altered in the completion of the solar and lunar tinctures. Thus, from the repetition of this, as much as you prepare, so many degrees of medicinal transformation and quality result from multiplication, so that it converts any of the imperfect metals, even mercury itself, infinitely into true gold or silver. And therefore, in conclusion, the philosophers ought to remain near their vessels and observe wonders, when it changes itself from color to better color, than can be described, until it reaches the goal of whiteness and redness. Therefore the whole governance in the management of this work lies in the tempering of the fire. From there, cease the fire and let it cool, and find the stone, a pearl-like body in the color of wild poppy. And this thing is waxing, melting, and penetrating, and one weight of it can transmute 1,000 times 1,000 thousands, and 200 times 1,000, immediately converting the whole body into the best gold or silver, according to the nature of the elixir. This medicine will most swiftly melt in fire, and congeal in air, for when the vapor senses the air, it will penetrate into the body, and the spirit will be bound in the dry, and it will become one fixed, bright, white or red body, according to the nature of the medicine and ferment, incorruptible as long as the world stands. For conclusion, note that mercury, lead, brass, minium, sulfur are not the vulgar kinds, but our sulfur is divine sulfur, extracted from two sulfurs, and is called sulfur of sulfur, and quicksilver of quicksilver, called by the philosophers, sharpest vinegar. And these two, sulfur and mercury, are really and essentially in the said vinegar, that is, in the aforementioned moisture of our stone is one nature of the stone itself. Truly, gold and silver, lead, minium, and brass, and the like, are essentially and really contained, and are in the common physical body, and its proper name you will find in the aforementioned 7 doubled propositions. Therefore, let him who has ears to hear, hear, and he who has eyes to see, see the stone known in the 7 propositions, and let him praise God. Here ends the Rosarium Abbreviatum of the unknown author. Tract the 2nd. On the Philosopher's Stone. By an unknown author. Let the practitioners of alchemy know that the species of metals truly cannot be changed, which is indeed true, because species themselves are not subject to sensible actions, since they are entirely incorruptible, but the subjects of the species can most certainly be changed, since they are corruptible. However, the subjects of the species cannot be changed unless they are first, as follows from the teachings of Aristotle, reduced to the first matter, and thus they are changed into another form than they were before. But against this, the reasoning does not hold, because when one form is destroyed, another is immediately introduced, as is evident in the works of countrymen, who make lime from stones and glass from ashes. So much more strongly can a wise and studious man corrupt individual things of a species and introduce a new form to them, because the intention of his operation is only this, that Mercury be bound in said bodies, since the elixir of the philosophers consists only of them. And of these operations, some are medicines of gold, which in some things agree with silver, and in some are different. For in the first part of its composition, the work of gold and silver agree in all things, but in the last part, at the point of fermentation, they differ, since the ferment of gold is gold, and the ferment of silver is silver, and there are no other ferments upon the earth. Other bodies indeed might be useful, but they will not be as good as those aforementioned, for the purity they lack, they cannot give. And so the philosopher says, why do you need to use other bodies, when you can have in these what is of greater temperance and lesser impurity? If, however, you are in need of their use, it is necessary that you first convert them into the likeness of the two said bodies, which can never be done until the sun and moon are cast upon them, reduced into one sought for medicine. For Mercury, since it is by its nature transformable, becomes one with each of the bodies whose nature it embraces. If joined with lead, it becomes lead, if with iron, iron, but if it is united with these two rays, it becomes the perfect elixir. Therefore, one must work only with this noble matter, because things are made only according to their nature. Let no one then seek from nature what is not in her, for he will weary his soul in vain, gaining nothing from it but toil, and the loss of things and of time. Our medicine then is not prepared in the bowels of the earth, but is perfected through art and operation, because from the said stones, nothing is useful without preparation and governance. There are, however, four principal modes of governance, namely, to dissolve, to cleanse, to join, and to fix. To dissolve is to corrupt, to divide, and to reduce into the first matter. To cleanse is to bury, distill, and calcine. To join is to impregnate, to whiten, and to redden. But to fix is to ferment, to marry, and to encerate. Dissolution converts the stone into its first matter, namely into water, cleansing into air, joining into fire, and fixing into earth. Hence Aristotle says, when you have water and air from fire, and fire from earth, then you shall have mastered the whole art, because then you have the four elements in one well-prepared part. Now, of the elements, two are primary and two secondary, the stony are fire and earth, the watery are air and water. You will extract water from the moist substance, air and fire from the dry substance. As for the earth, we will say that it is from the fixed substance of the body. For earth and fire drink and retain, but fire and air, and water and air, cleanse, die, and perfect earth and fire. Therefore, the water must be mild, and the oil unboiled, for the abundance of its infusion will be as great as the quantity of the oil. Thus, the stone is gradually dissolved, that it may be converted into mercury and divided into the four elements, so that its first matter may wholly be obtained. Then it is cleansed, that its impurity be taken away, and it returns to the color of quicksilver, just as it was at the beginning, and the saltness of its sulfur is lessened. Afterward, it is calcined, so that its matter is refined, and it can be turned from coarse to fine, and from thick to subtle. Then it is washed with the water of mercury, that the matter might regain the moisture it lost in the lime. Next, it is sublimed, so that its attenuated matter may be further purified, and in this act it is refined so that sulfur and quicksilver may be obtained in mode upon the earth, from that matter from which gold and silver were made under the earth. Then the ferment is added to it, from that matter we wish to make, namely, if to silver, silver. Then the spirit is inserted with the body, it is made incorporeal, and fixed in it, in such a way that it is united with it, standing, penetrating deeply, dying and remaining, one part of which, according to its quantity, converts the body into a better part, whose body becomes into the truest gold or silver, according as its elixir shall have been prepared. Thus it also has a most effective power above all other medicines of the philosophers to cure every infirmity, for if the illness has lasted 1 month, it cures it in a day, if it has lasted a year, it cures it in 12 days, but if it has been ancient and long held, it cures it in a month. And therefore this medicine is above all to be sought beyond the riches of this world. This ardent mastery makes us equal to kings and the highest of the world, for whoever possesses it endlessly possesses a treasure. Treatise the Third. On the Philosophical Mineral. By an unknown author. There is one stone, one medicine, in which the whole magistery of the art of alchemy consists, to which we neither add any foreign thing, nor diminish it, except that in the preparation we remove the superfluous. For you do not need to use any other body in this work, except the purest sun or the best moon, but you must labor concerning their intimate solution and perfect subtilization. The first degree of their preparation is, that you make from them quicksilver, and when they have been made mercurial, they will be of manifest liquefaction and occult subtilization. Thus you may understand that the work is directed in 4 ways. The first mode is the dissolution of the stone, the second purification, the third nourishment, the fourth espousal. Regarding the first, the stone is dissolved through frequent grinding and gentle roasting. Therefore, with God's help, take some mercury washed with salt and vinegar, and then distill it through an alembic, and discard the residues you obtain. Do this a second time, and you will have a deadly poison. Then place in different vials 1 part of the purest sun and 3 of the aforementioned poison, and cook with a slow fire until it blackens on the surface. Then wisely collect that blackness, and set aside the white poison collected through a most subtle linen cloth, and what you find not dissolved from the body, grind well in a glass vessel, in the philosophical manner, then put it to cook with its white poison, and when the blackness floats to the surface, collect it as previously described, until no blackness floats on the water. Do this often until the whole body is turned into blackness and completely dissolved. Grind, cook, and repeat, and do not be weary. The grinding of the body and its resolution into water is to be done by the decoction of water and earth in a very slow fire over the space of 40 days. The second work is the purification of the stone, which is done through the rectification of the elements, because it is capable of such a likeness. This rectification of the elements is done through the distillation of the signs of water and air, and the roasting of the earth. Then take the water of the stone, and place it in a clean cucurbit or retort, and above it place the powder of one collected in the upper part, and close the alembic, and seal it with the clay of wisdom, and distill gently with a slow fire, so that you have the 4 elements separated, and place each element below. The rectification of the water by the earth is to be repeated by distilling it 7 times from the earth, and each time before rectification discard the feculent earth, received by pressing through a linen cloth. Then take first the water and rectify it by distilling it 7 times, and set aside the dregs you produce, and so you will have 2 elements well rectified, cleansed from all impurity. Then take the earth, water, and fire, and in the same way it will be sublimated 7 times, collecting the elements above through the skin of a man who has only 1 testicle, and these 2 elements being mixed and well rectified are free from all their dross. The earth indeed in the bottom of the cucurbit is thus rectified. Take it and calcine it, and wisely collect the air existing in it, and when the earth has been well calcined and emptied of all air, it will be of a pale color, fit for impregnation, and if the spirit remains in it, it will be like black earth and will receive the nourishment of its water, and by this you will know you have the 4 elements well rectified and purified. The third work is nourishment, which is the tasting of the food through the imbibition of water. Then place the calcined earth in a vial, and pour upon it some of its rectified water, and cook with a gentle fire for 1 week, and then gently calcine it, and pour upon it more water as before, and cook again for another week. Do this diligently until all the water has been imbibed. For it is necessary that the earth be fed little by little, and afterwards more abundantly, as is seen in the nourishment of an infant. Note that the washing is to be done through the distillation of water, and the coagulation of this water through the philosophical imbibitions of the water upon that earth. Therefore wash the earth with the philosophical method of earth, and also cook, it will drink of its water as much as it can, namely as much as it is itself. For it alone is sometimes inferior to itself and will no longer be complete, and cannot go further. And if it has not been completely nourished, it is not purified, nor will it return to its color. Note that you must have in separation as much air as you received of water, namely the first weight of the body, and the first and second weights of the water of the body, namely of mercury, as at the beginning. Also wash the earth in the philosophical manner, and cook your work in air, so that it drinks of it in conformity as it did of its aforementioned water. Let this be done often until it drinks of the air an amount equal to the imbibed water, and always for 8 days cook and calcine gently. But if you wish to work toward redness, you may operate with a stronger fire so that the entire composition is embraced, until it returns to ashes, which you should not despise, because it is necessary to use them again in the work with the nourishment of their own fire. Therefore, place these aforesaid ashes in their fire until they are melted and drink their fire, and then your composition will be sweet, pleasant, and red like blood. When indeed the earth becomes red with its final rubefaction, the red tincture will appear in the nature of the poison, which penetrates, and is, as it were, the first in color. Therefore, strengthen the operation as appropriate, balance the weights properly, and the composition will be red, in the color of coral, and this is the sign of complete digestion, perfection, and the fulfillment of the tincture in the operation, whose tincture can endure all other trials by fire infinitely. Now concerning the manner of joining the elements together, Avicenna says, first place the water, because it is on the side of the furnace, then place the water, again, because it is on the side of the earth. Third, place the air, because it is on the side of the water, then you shall place fire in the work for whiteness, because the work of whiteness is made from 3 wheels, that is, from earth, water, and oil, where there shall be no fire. However, the work of redness is made from 4 wheels, where fire cannot in any way be omitted. If first you place oil in the air and afterward the earth, the oil would be mortified in the earth when the water entered. But if you take the water and then the oil would be above the earth. And if then you place the water and afterward the earth, the water would be heavier because of the earth. Now I will reveal the magistery plainly, never make the fire, but make the place where the fire is. Open the gate of its fire, and around the air the fire will enter, and thus with the water and the earth, in such a way that they adhere. And know that if you destroy one of the 4 elements, all are dead, and if one has more soul than the other elements, your work is worthless. Understand what I say, for it is to be commended to God. Note the fermentation of the elixir, projecting it onto such a body as you took at the beginning, most excellently purified, and in the first projection let there be 1 part of the medicine to 3 parts of the body, and afterward, if you wish, 1 part of the medicine with 2, 3, or 4 parts, more usefully according to what you find to be the strength of the medicine. And this is the 4th work. The 4th work, therefore, is to strip away through the mixing of its first body, because it has become substantial. To understand this, the elixir must be fixed in its own body from which it was originally extracted. For when the spirit dissolves the soul, it dissolves the body also, that they may be reduced to its form. It shall not be fixed and shall not die unless you occupy it in its own court, for its occupation is its fixation, made through fermentation. That is, you must join it to its prepared body from the beginning, for it will be occupied in that on account of the suitability of the form of the aforementioned spirit to the essence of the body. Do not join it to the body of any other thing, because it would change the nature of any other body, rather, join it to that body from which it drew its origin. If you do this, all will be elixir that you join. Surely, for many who labor, their aim fails after the work is completed due to ignorance of this secret. Note well these words, for if you project your work upon gold or silver, or any other body, it will not convert the nature of that body into the nature of the inner body, but rather that body will convert, the medicine, into its own nature. And if you project that body onto another body, the body onto which the projection is made will become elixir, converting all into its own kind. So understand that if you project it onto silver, it will not move silver from its form, but if you project that silver onto another imperfect body, such as copper, tin, or lead, you will convert it into silver. In the same way, if you project your work onto copper, it will render other bodies convertible into the substance of copper. And therefore Plato the philosopher says that the body in which the spirit is occupied during fixation is the thing from which the work is prepared. Mark well that you must not take any other body as ferment for the dispensation of the medicine except the purest sun, gold, or the purest moon, silver. And elsewhere Aristotle says, "He who does not coagulate white quicksilver that withstands fire and does not join it with pure silver has no vein, path, to whiteness, and he who causes quicksilver to become red by fire and does not marry it with pure gold has no vein to redness." Mark well this precept of the philosophers, very worthy of good memory. Therefore, do not labor on any body, for you cannot come to perfection, but will come to nothing, nor will anyone discern for himself where he errs by straying, and this is one of the greatest secrets of the philosophers. Note well the quantity of medicine to be projected upon the body in the dispensation. You must indeed know well that when you project your elixir upon any body, beware that the elixir does not exceed the quantity of the body. Instead, project a small amount of your work upon a great quantity of the body, and all will become spiritual powder. For if you project a large amount of your work upon a large amount of the body, then after some time it will become a powder similar in color to the body onto which it is projected. And this completed elixir converts all other bodies into its own kind. And when you have prepared such powder, project it onto other bodies, or even onto Mercury, by sight, and thus you will have sun or moon as much as you wish, better than what is extracted from the mine. Finish of the short treatise on the philosophical mineral. Fourth treatise, which is called A Useful Compendium for Believing in the Experiment of Meditation. It testifies to the credibility of the meditation's experiment that spirits are more akin to bodies, because they unite with bodies more than other things do, since they harmonize more subtly with them in nature. From this, therefore, our first discovery was this, that spirits are the true medicine for the alteration of bodies, namely, when investigating the other spirits we find no other spirit besides Mercury to be amicable to the nature of metallic bodies. Therefore, through our work, investigating this, we discovered that it is indeed the true medicine for things subject to alteration when it comes to perfect transformation. And truly, what is lacking in imperfect bodies is the small amount of mercury present in them, and also its lack of inspissation, thickening, which would be the complete complement in those imperfect bodies, provided that the inspissation and fixation were of equal power and essence and were good. This, however, is perfected by the medicine created from it, namely, from mercury, which, through the benefit of its clarity and brightness, becomes a sufficient guardian, palladium, for them, and sustains and elevates them into splendor and transforms them into brilliance. But since mercury is fluid and fugitive, it does not affect change unless its nature is properly administered. And therefore, we found it must necessarily be prepared so that its substance becomes such that it may remain hidden, penetrating to the very depth of the alterable body, without separation, forever. This is not achieved except by subtle and final purification, certainly through many repetitions of sublimation, from dry things that burn and desiccate, but which are free of sulfur. And its ingress does not persist without form, nor does it give illumination except through a most shining substance extracted from there, nor does it provide fusion unless in fixation, and this requires the utmost caution. Therefore, imitating nature as much as possible, we sublime it from the hottest and driest substances, and we sublime it again and again, until it is clothed in perfection by removal of its superfluities and assumes the whitest color, sometimes in a fortnight, sometimes in 9 days, sometimes in a single day, completed in cycles. When, therefore, you see it appearing almost dead, and adhering to the spondyles, collars or necks, of the a little as white as snow, then we divide it into 2 parts, one of which we keep below, to sublime the stone with its earth, the other we throw into flowing water until it returns to mercury. Then, from what was earlier reserved for the red work, we dissolve it in its red water and instantly coagulate it. Next, we add to it the red fire of the stone, repeating upon it the entire work of grinding, imbibition, and roasting many times, until it is dry and red. By the method already described, we sublime it with sublimated and rubified mercury, not fixed, joined again and again, until the whole has been lifted a second and third time, so red in color that it is useful. Afterward, we fix it by the same method so that it remains stable. From here, we dissolve and coagulate it by turns, and we reserve it for fermentation for the red work of the sun. Then we dissolve the white earth reserved for the white work, and to one part of it we add 3 parts of the purest moon, silver, similarly dissolved. Joining both these solutions together, we grind and roast them until the whole becomes one body, to which we add enough of its own white oil, repeating many times the grinding, inceration, and roasting so that it may be better incorporated. From here, we repeatedly sublime it, always returning what ascends to the part below that remains fixed, until all is fixed below. Sometimes this is completed in 4, 5, or even 7 iterations, which is the ultimate number. Yet in every iteration, we fully incorporate everything through grinding, inceration, and roasting. Thus, in repeated steps, we sublime the unfixed until all has become fixed. Then we apply to it the strongest fire for a full day, and by the grace of God, the elixir is complete, stable, tinging, penetrating, consolidating, and enduring, of which one part converts 1,000 parts of any body into the truest moon. Furthermore, we again dissolve the whole in its own white oil and coagulate it, then we dissolve it once more and join it with the unfixed part, and sublime it in turns until all the fixed is completely lifted with the unfixed. When it has been lifted, we repeat its sublimation until, by repetition of this process, the whole is fixed. When it is fixed, we again dissolve it and again sublime it, until the whole is lifted once more. Then we fix it again by the continuous repetition of sublimation upon it, until it remains stable. We repeat all preparations upon it until it gives an easy fusion as a certainty. Then it will work more abundantly and perfectly, because one part of it will convert 1,000 parts of any prepared body, and of washed mercury, into the truest silver, and better than that extracted from the mine. Likewise is the retification for the sun, except that red things are applied more thickly and the work of the sun is performed. That is, by the redifying hand, we join together with flowing calcined gold, dissolved in its red oil, and sublime one with the other until all is fixed below. Again, we repeat upon it the dissolutions, sublimations, and fixations many times, until it becomes and alters each of the imperfect things into true and certain gold. However, the red work requires more sublimation in its steps than the white work. Therefore, it must be sublimed, dissolved, and coagulated more often. In the red work, nothing enters except what is red, just as in the white work, nothing enters except what is white. And the more often we dissolve, coagulate, and sublime, the more perfectly, abundantly, and excellently it will work, and it will increase beyond its own number, converting every imperfect thing into infinity, into true and certain gold. But just as a good master cannot know except with good reasons, so neither can a good master be unless he knows all the reasons of this art. Therefore, you ought to know that when our stone is divided into the 4 elements, for if you cast a little of it upon a diminished body, it makes that body gold or silver, yet this could not be done without preparation and sublimation, because its imperfect parts lack the power to enter into the smallest parts of the body. Therefore, we divide the stone and its matter, which is barely fit at all, and we use the bare elements, and suppose we have a root. Then we join them, because at that very hour it incorporates itself with the body, which before could not happen on account of its coarseness, and this is the one reason why we divide the stone into its elements. Afterwards, we calcine the earth to thin its matter, then dissolve it with its own water so that it recovers the moisture lost in its calcination, then we coagulate and incerate it, so that it can return from matter into matter, and be soft enough to be fused. Afterwards, we add to it dissolved mercury and sublime the whole so that its matter may be more attenuated and well incorporated together. And all this we do so that we have mercury and sulfur from that matter upon the earth from which gold and silver are made beneath the earth. Then we apply the fire of the stone so that it may be well colored by the operation of the sun and become red as is desired, and the fire of our stone is dry and is gold. When it has been well prepared, dissolved, sublimed, and coagulated, we add to it the ferment from that matter which we want to make, namely, if it is to become gold, let it become gold, if silver, silver. And thus we make peace between fire and water, air and earth, because we give to each element of the stone what it says it accomplishes, so that they no longer remain hostile in our masterwork. Then, accordingly, we resolve, sublime, and coagulate the whole many times in repeated turns, until it flows and changes each imperfect metallic body into infinity, into true gold-making or silver-making according to every artificer's judgment. In this is completed the most precious secret which is above all the treasures of the world. To the Most High God be eternal and perpetual praises and thanks. Fifth Treatise, which is called Rosarium Philosophorum, from the compilation of all philosophers' books, by the great Toletan philosopher. A desirable desire, an imperishable price, set by all philosophers, which is neither laid down nor supposed to have been badly proposed, here briefly collected in summary from the books of the ancients, so that the argument of truth may be most clearly and sufficiently revealed to you, proving that it belongs to the most excellent part of philosophy. And indeed we call this summary the Rosary, because from the books of the philosophers, like roses plucked from thorns, we present to you this very thing, in which by clear speech and correct order, and word for word, with all its sufficient causes, we succinctly deliver whatever we find necessary from their books for the completion of this work. And because whatever opposes reason harms the truth, therefore, using the sentences of truth in all respects, we will put nothing superfluous in it, nor anything diminished from the whole masterwork. May our Lord Jesus Christ grant us the spirit of his understanding. All works of divine goodness are circular and perfect, revolving spherically toward him from whom they came forth. From the beginning, before the origin of creation, God, preeminent over all nature, made four simple bodies, from which afterward he constituted all mixed bodies. Of the mixed, some are intellectual, some sensitive and vegetative, some only intellectual, some made only from the rarity of the elements. Therefore our heart is restless until we return to him, for the rarity of all elements ascends to the fire which is above the stars. Thus also we, created from that, rightly tend upward to God as to the one principle. All sensitive and also vegetative things, composed from the spirit and order of the elements, differ in species, therefore, when they dissolve by death, they rightly return to earth and water, as to their mother, since by nature the spirit of the elements tends downward to its center, namely the earth. However, the nature of all stable things has a definite limit of magnitude and growth, so that within its species it increases its like, and some of them are dissimilar in their parts, such as flesh, blood, and bones, or wood, bark, and leaves. Some parts are similar, such as those which throughout are of one essence, as is seen in metals, but those whose parts are dissimilar nevertheless possess sensation, whereby the embedded earth multiplies and grows, as appears in trees and herbs. But those whose parts are similar do not multiply unless their matter is first reduced to its first, original, form. Therefore the philosopher Aristotle says, "Let the artisans of alchemy know that the species of metals cannot be transmuted into perfection unless they first reduce them to the first matter, and then indeed they are transmuted and are true species if they are well moved and changed." Note the reason why the resolution of the body into the first matter, namely the living agent, must be done, and that because the corruption of one is the generation of another, both in artificials and in natural things. Art imitates nature and in some respects corrects and surpasses it, just as nature is aided by the diligent skill of physicians, for nature itself neither builds a house nor makes a medicine, because it lacks within itself the motion to do so. Likewise, our stone, although it naturally contains tincture, for it is perfectly created in the earth, yet it does not possess the motion to make the perfect elixir unless it is moved by art. Therefore, one art accomplishes what nature alone cannot work by itself, while another art imitates and perfects to the extent that things are naturally born and perfected by nature. Hence, art must assist nature in what nature cannot perfect by itself, because there is no difference between nature and art except that art acts externally, whereas nature acts internally, for art is like an instrument that administers motion, but nature itself acts by itself, since it strives toward its own perfection. Moreover, every body is either an element or composed of elements, and all generation of composites necessarily consists of the four simple elements. Therefore, our stone must necessarily be reduced to the first origin of its mercury and sulfur, divided into elements, otherwise, it cannot be purified or joined together, because its smallest parts cannot enter except into the smallest parts of a body. But divided, it is purified and again joined, and the elixir we seek operates. For experiment destroys its specific form, but before the division into elements, nothing is seen or touched except earth and water, because air and fire are nowhere visible nor are their virtues known except in the said prior elements, for they are altogether rare and simple, and therefore cannot be seen by the eyes and bodies, therefore you need not care for them, since it suffices for you to see the matter in its simple purity. The elements, however, are four, also the modes are four, and the humours four, namely blood, choler, phlegm, and melancholy. The modes are hot, cold, moist, and dry. The elements are fire, air, water, and earth, of which two are active and two passive. Fire and air are active, water and earth are passive, two ascend and two descend, one is hot, coming from the union of contraries except through a medium. Hot and cold do not unite except through the medium, namely moist and dry, because by themselves they will not remain together since one dulls the other because of their opposition, therefore hot and cold join and disperse by union, dissolution, and coagulation, but moist and dry aggregate and disperse by constricting and moistening. The operation of the elements is also a simple and natural generation and permutation, for the hot fire overcomes the cold, binding the matter, but when the agents are overcome, it liquefies, because partly violence and indigestion happen, therefore, things universally are changed and varied by hot and cold, and simply generated and naturally permuted. But from any determined thing arises one determined thing, because there is no generation except from things agreeing in nature, for man begets man, lion lion, thus each produces its like. None, however, being of different kinds, ever looks like itself nor begets its similar, likewise it is with all born of a different kind. Therefore it is necessary that the elements be of one kind, not diverse, otherwise, they will have no action or passion toward one another, since one does not touch the other. Thus, doubt returns concerning the stone called the Philosopher's Stone, what it is or what kind it is, since no philosopher openly names it. On this point different ones have declared different things, although the truth consists in one alone. We keep to that one, and teach to avoid all others, for it is clear from the writings of the philosophers that there is one thing, not different, which ought to be joined to itself, but nothing suits a thing except what is nearer and of its own nature, for they do not bring forth things except similar to themselves, nor do they bear fruit except their own fruits. Therefore, since things of one kind are the roots of their roots are of one kind. The diversity of things is indeed caused by the diversity of their parts, therefore I know the world from impurity, because nothing gives what it does not have. The world is of one essence, free from impurities, the impure is diverse and made from diversities, belonging to the generated and the corruptible. This is proven in the Sun and Saturn, because Saturn corrupts all things, but the Sun does so least. Therefore, knowledge of the body is from the clarity of bodies, and the principle of their creation easily accomplishes this mastery, for impurities cling to impurities when they are of the same kind, but purity conquers the nature of the world, not assuming defects of mixture. Do not seek in nature what is not in it, since things only come to be according to their nature, and greater corruption is found in the passive thing than in the active. Use therefore the nobler and simpler member, and it will suffice for you. Yet the member of the heart is from the body as is the member of the brain from the head, because in the heart is the power of the rational soul. However, one of these has angles belonging to a nobler and simpler geometry close by, just as the triangle is closer in simplicity than the quadrangle, since it has fewer boundaries. A round body is simple, having no angle. Therefore, reject the composite and simply extract the simple, for it is the genus of genera and the form of forms, since it is the first and last in the planets as the sun is in the stars. The sun, then, is strong with homogeneous elements in its nature, for it has an easier passage in those having the symbol. Therefore, since the sought thing is of the kind of both the world's luminaries, it is necessary to choose that which best agrees with the nature of those very luminaries, and certainly, with this kind of light, much is known, because the work is not perfected except through it. Crowns are adorned with precious stones, whose beauty delights the sight, pleases the soul, ornaments dignity, and by their virtue expel the gravest diseases from bodies, without which all medicine is of little effect. Therefore, physicians use them in their medicines to expel the gravest illnesses. Moreover, it is a most true argument of the learned that the best stone of all stones is best for expelling all infirmities. Know from this that the best stone of all stones is gold by intellect. Therefore, the best stone of all stones is that which is most cooked and closest to fire, which endures fire more and breaks more slowly by fire. Hence precious stones like rubies and sapphires are more effective than other stones, because they are generated in hotter places, nearer the sun with greater heat. Thus gold is more effective than silver because it is more cooked, and silver more than copper or other base metals, and just as the ruby has in itself the effect of all precious stones, so too gold has in itself the virtue of all metals for distillation, though not for coagulation. It dyes and vivifies them, since it is the noblest of all, and it is with this that you capture gold. But the ruby, because of the harmony of its elements, is more complex, since for the most part it is from a shining substance, like from clear water, and it coagulates with dryness and great heat. Therefore, it neither sweetens nor is reduced to another state unless it is destroyed entirely, because it is opposed to fire on every side. Gold, on the other hand, being from the substance of earth mixed with water in the smallest measure, is homogeneous with fire, being on one side of two extremes, and coagulates with cold after the action of heat in it. For this reason it is sweetened and improved by fire, it is proportioned to a better complexion, from which, a nobler composition is before all other precious stones. Next immediately is silver, hence gold and silver together for the stone. The defect of other bodies is that in them heat is added or coldness diminished, as coldness is deficient in copper and iron, heat in tin and lead. But gold and silver are rightly and equally composed, and truly tempered, before all other stones, as if under the sky they belong to the species of natural stones. And gold is certainly the lord of stones, the nobler of bodies, their king and best head, for it is not corrupted by air, nor by water, nor by earth, nor is it diminished by fire. Indeed, fire adorns, decorates, and corrects its moisture, and things scorching do not burn it, nor corrupting things corrupt it, because its composition is tempered, and its nature directed in equal heat and cold, moisture and dryness, and in it nothing is superfluous nor diminished. Therefore no stones, no matter how highly priced, prevail over gold, although some are dearer than gold, not because they exceed gold in price, but because they are rarer and found less frequently. It should be noted deeply that there is no stone better than the sun, and that the work is in no way accomplished without the sun, for it is the ferment of the elixir. Therefore of all things in this age gold is more valuable, since it is the ferment of the elixir, without which the work is by no means completed. Gold rejoices, preserves youth, renews old age, and expels every infirmity of the body. It is like the ferment of dough, the coagulation of milk into cheese, and like moss in fine spices. By merit gold surrounds the upper solar part, silver the lower lunar part, hence they say to see the sun and moon for their creation is more true, but because I see the sun and moon, I most certainly know that it is truer. For everything in nature which is simple and admirable are herbs, as well as vegetables in nature. The sun therefore is the tincture of redness, which transforms every body. The moon is the tincture of whiteness, since it is the mistress of moisture, when the spirits are mixed with the sun and follow through it the great ingenuity which does not reach the artificer of a hard neck, for spirits in nature, if changed, die, and when dead they appear similar, afterwards, breathed in, they come, multiply, and grow like the others. Therefore unless a grain of wheat falling to the ground dies, it alone remains, if it is dead, it brings forth much fruit, and what seemed lost is restored. From this, an excellent destruction knows not its own construction, and by the act of nature it is necessary that it knows not. It is calcined and dissolved with great labor but without profit. Therefore, why should you use other bodies when you can have in these that which has greater temperance and less dross? If you need to use them, first they must be converted into the species of those mentioned above, and then begin the operation upon them. However, it is possible to work with them since all bodies contain science, but they will not be as good as those aforementioned, because in the greater work not all bodies are rightful to perfection, they are diminished, and they enter the work only until in the subtlety of composition they become like perfect bodies. However, the white and the red sprout from one root without any other kind of intervening body, for the moon and the silver work forms that whiteness which is the purest matter of the sun, retaining nothing of its own color, it indicates it, yet the sun, whitening the quicksilver, deprives it. This is because the true generation of all things is from matter and form. Therefore all the benefit of this art lies in the sun and moon. If you are in need of labor around their solution, reduce them to their first matter, and their first matter is quicksilver, living silver, because when they are dissolved, all bodies turn into it. Certainly, all things are from what they are dissolved into, since it is resolved into water by moderate heating, it is therefore clear that the water existed first. Without doubt, doubtful things can be resolved into quicksilver, therefore they were first quicksilver themselves. Here, then, note the resolution of bodies into quicksilver. Blessed, therefore, be the sublimated Lord of nature, by whom from one reason everything is discerned and reduced to its first matter and nature, that is, bodies prepared to their first origin, like the philosopher's Mercury, so that from them gold may be generated in likeness of heaven from earth, which by natural operation under tension takes 1,000 years only. Hence if we did not have such benefit from quicksilver except that it makes bodies subtler to their nature, this itself ought to suffice us, for it is friendly and agreeable to metals, and the medium joining them in tinctures, since it receives in itself what is of its own nature, and rejects what is alien, because it is uniform in substance, homogeneous in all its parts. Indeed it is that which surpasses fire and is not surpassed by it, but in it rests friendly rejoicing, because of the good adhesion of its parts and the strength of its mixture. If in any way its parts were heated by fire, it does not allow itself to be corrupted further, nor by the ingress of smoky flame does it permit itself to be raised higher, for it does not permit its rarefaction, because of its density and lack of burning. Truly therefore, we say those bodies are of greater perfection which contain more quicksilver, and those are less perfect in those which contain less of it, and certainly imperfect in composites, and rarely few. From this arises the direct thickening, which tends toward abundance in them. This will be the multiplication of quicksilver, good thickening, and permanent fixation. Therefore apply yourself when you are in the work on them, so that through it alone you may perfect. You will be a seeker of the most precious and perfection, and you will rejoice in the highest perfection which conquers nature, for you will be able to purify inwardly that which nature does not reach, and so consequently from it you will be able to create a work which surpasses all nature. There is no difference whether this is done in natural organs or in artificial ones. From these therefore extract the secret necessary for our medicine, taken from those substances which most closely adhere to quicksilver, argentum vivum, in its depths, and which are ground to the smallest particles before it flees. But quicksilver adheres more closely to quicksilver itself, and is more beloved by it. Next comes gold, and then silver. Other bodies, however, have less conformity to it, because their pure nature participates less. Nothing fumes in it unless the sun is immersed in it, therefore it is necessary that this medicine be extracted positively from those in which it mostly consists, and this is found both in bodies and in quicksilver itself according to nature. It is indeed more difficult to find in bodies, but closer, though not more perfect, in quicksilver. Consequently, the medicine is of the same kind both in bodies and in quicksilver itself, removed by impellation and subtlety, and reduced to the highest degree, for the tincture passes from the external to the external only through a medium, since the external is the colorant, and on the side is quicksilver, and from the other side, the perfect elixir. The means between these are 6 bodies which extend away from the malleus, hammer, some of which are more purified, decocted, and digested, and these are the nearest, as we Christianly believe, and not to be ignored. Therefore do not err, because there is no true tincture except from our copper, that is, from the Philosopher's Stone. Moreover, all gold is copper, but not all copper is gold, because genus does not imply species. Thus all gold is red sulfur, but not all sulfur is gold, because nothing in gold comes from the corruption of sulfur. Therefore our stone, according to the diversity of its operation, can convert quicksilver into the most true silver, or even into purest gold, as will become clear below. However, when it has been whitened in the work, it operates by the action of white sulfur, coagulating mercury into pure silver, and if it has had longer digestion, it will be the best black sulfur, converting mercury into dark gold. If this stage is lacking, seek another stone and foolishly do not waste your money or bring perpetual sadness to your spirit, for if you help these things, you will reap. Therefore do not put all your trust in yourself and the scarabs, nor eat of the son whose mother is corrupt, but eat a morsel of the fatter flesh, for it is folly to make your work from the worse when it can be done from the better. Therefore diminish the dark plurality of names, because different names are imposed on this matter according to the various colors appearing in the work, since there is one sun, one moon, and one thing. So use nature reverently, because nature is not improved except in its own nature, lest you introduce alien things, neither dust, nor water, nor anything else. Be constant in your will in the work, and do not attempt this or that arbitrarily, for in the multitude of things our art is not perfected. Our stone is therefore one medicine, one vessel, one regimen, and one disposition of the same, to which we add no foreign thing nor diminish it, except that in its preparation we remove the superfluous, for nothing enters it that does not originate from it, neither in part nor in whole. If anything foreign is added, it is immediately corrupted, and what is sought will not be made from it. Therefore our stone is one, namely a permanent water, marvelous, bright, clear, having a celestial color, yet the true spirit in that water which perfects it, the thing you seek, cannot be made otherwise. Note therefore that this water cannot be perfected without the sun. Indeed, we honor the sun, because our water is not perfected without it, for without the sun and its shadow, no tincturing poison is generated, that is, prepared quicksilver, argentum vivum. But whoever strives to make a tincturing poison without these proceeds to a witch's folly and like a donkey to the feast, and this is because body does not act on body, nor spirit on spirit, since form does not receive impression from form, nor matter from matter. For the similar does not act upon its like, since neither is worthy of the other, and so none acts on another, because equal to equal has no dominion. Yet body does receive impression from spirit, as matter from form, because they are naturally suited to act and suffer each other. Therefore, body dies, but spirit penetrates, yet spirit does not die the body unless it itself is died, because the earthly spirit does not enter due to its coarseness, but rather the subtle aerial spirit that enters and dies, and this is the sulfur of the body extracted by nature. Therefore gold is not dyed except from that from which its hidden spirit is extracted from its womb, and all becomes spiritual. Therefore our living water is fire, burning gold, killing and binding all elemental fatness, and the more it is mixed and ground by fire, the more it is broken down, and the living fiery water is refined. If gold has been ground and made into one thing, it has in itself all tincture-bearing fire. Therefore the body so colored by spirit colors, and has and gives all tincture in itself. Hence those who join the sun and its shadow, that is the moon, in a tincturing poison, perfect our stone. But unless the stone had action and passion mutually from both substances, the one would not tincture the other. Therefore the stone and the wood have no operation between themselves, because they are from different matter, as is the case with all things of different matter. It is necessary that agent and patient be in general one and the same, but in species different and distinct, just as a woman differs from a man, for although they agree in genus and nature, yet between them there is distinction and distinct operation. The agent and the patient do not agree, matter desires form, and form acts upon matter, and form is like its own matter. Therefore, matter naturally desires form, as a woman desires a man, and the ugly desires the beautiful. Likewise, the spirit willingly desires the body, desiring perfection in itself. Therefore know the knowledge of knowledge. Let us call our work, as much as we can. I cannot express it by another name nor call it by another name, but by its description from the root I name it here. Rightly then is our stone called by the philosophers, all things, because it has in itself and from itself all things necessary for its perfection. It is called all things, by all on account of the excellence of its nature, and because hidden within it is a diverse action. It is found everywhere by participation of the elements, and is most vile because of putrefaction, most precious because of virtue, black, white, and citron according to the change of colors. Therefore set aside the multitude of its diverse names, for whatever way it is named, it is always one and the same alone. Philosophers certainly do not care about names, but about the properties of names, because by one name the rest are understood, for the thing is not subject to speech, but speech to the thing. Know intimately about the medicine that it cannot be red before it is white, therefore our medicine is similar both in existence and mode of action, and yet it is necessary that the same medicine be white before it becomes red, because it cannot proceed unless it was first white. No one can pass from the first to the third without passing through the second, thus there is no passage from black to citron except through white, because citron is composed of much white and little black. Therefore, do not try first to make this medicine red without whitening it, you will not succeed. Hence the white and red medicine do not differ in essence, but in that the red medicine requires more subtilization and longer digestion with heat and fire under its regimen, and this because the end of the red operation, which is perfected in one, must be begun in the other, for the whole masterwork begins and ends in one way. The red work requires the red, just as the white work requires the white ferment. Our stone's vessel is one in which the whole masterwork is completed, and it is a certain cucurbit and alembic, or a single thick glass vessel closed all around, 1 cubit long, round below and above, without a flat foot, whose bottom is a small circumference with flat walls and the breadth of the head, so that sublimation may ascend freely through it, for when sudden rising is necessary, it may better place the fire beneath and above. Indeed, no other material is less suitable than glass, unless perhaps it is similar in substance to it, for only glass and that which is like glass, whose body is clear, transparent, and lacking pores, is able to hold in fleeing spirits so that they are not destroyed by the fire, and to show the colors appearing in the work so that the operator does not err in the regimen. Other vessels do not, because their bodies are opaque, that is, dark and porous, through which spirits would gradually, little by little, vanish into smoke. It is proper that the spirits rise as smoke and do not descend, therefore the cucurbit is joined to its alembic by its weak spirits up to the zone. The joint must be ingeniously made and well fitted so that nothing can enter or exit through it, it must also be sealed strongly and continuously so that nothing may escape or enter. For if air or any other moisture enters the process of corruption, its odor will flow out, that is, white smoke will escape and flee, and the entire work is deprived of its effect. The regimen of our stone is one, to decoct continually and uninterruptedly in its vessel until you achieve the desired end. The philosophers have posited many artificial things, either as jests or veneration, such as continuation, occultation, and purification, so that nothing filthy or unclean is introduced, as well as to mix, cook, water, putrefy, whiten, and redden. These are many names, but their regimen is one, which is simply to cook, and therefore it is nothing other than a woman's work and a child's play. Grind, cook, and repeat, do not cease to repeat this many times, because if the philosophers knew that one decoction and one grinding would suffice, they would not have repeated their sayings so often. Therefore they made and said this, the compound must be ground continually and cooked without interruption. All its regimen depends on the temper of the fire, because the diversity of its regimens depends on the degrees of fire. In solution the fire is always gentle, in sublimation moderate, in coagulation temperate, in whitening continuous, in reddening strong and continuous. If you err ignorantly in these, you will often undo the work by your labor. Therefore it is most prudent that you attend diligently to the work, and do not abandon a truncated work, for you will acquire neither knowledge nor profit from an abandoned work, but rather loss and despair. You also need to be learned in natural philosophy and advanced in industry so that you can, in an instant, remedy error by knowledge, for by natural industry alone you cannot amend, since art is aided by ingenuity and ingenuity by art. Similarly, it is expedient not to be ignorant of the principles of this art, for whoever ignores the end will not find it, nor will you find the sophistic goal of the work by imitation alone, but intend only the completion of the stone, lest God, in whose power our art is reserved, deny you its truth forever. Know then intimately about the disposition of our stone, which is the entire work. The disposition of our stone is only one, that it be placed in its vessel and cooked continually in fire until the whole is dissolved and ascends, then the fire must be strengthened until it has exhausted its moisture, and it is dry and very white. Third, the fire must be further strengthened until it is citron and very red. But if you are negligent in these pains during the work, you will see nothing of them. Therefore be diligent when you are in the work to remember all the signs which appear in every decoction and to investigate their causes, because all these are necessary for the artificer and suitable for the completion of the entire work. Those ignorant of causes must also necessarily be ignorant of effects. Know therefore about your vessel, and that the seed must be imposed once so that a good generation may occur and not many times. And although philosophers say many times, put into your vessel and likewise close it, it suffices to impose and close once until you complete the entire masterwork. More is harmful, because if you impose many times, then gold will not turn red nor white. Therefore all the residue of the art lies in the occultation, and certainly you have no material for generation except vegetable or animal if you have imposed the seed once in the matrix, but if it were imposed again, it would destroy the other seed because of the crudity of indigestion or the ingress of air or the excess of matter. Therefore women expose themselves to many men and perish, for they conceive very rarely, and if they conceive quickly, those who miscarry rarely conceive again. Thus, raw things when cooked and undigested placed against digested things can oppose and destroy nourishment, because the fetus is nourished only from the blood of the mother and lives until it is brought forth into the light. From this it is clear that our work does not require many things, nor does it demand great expense, although it is a stone, one vessel, one regimen, and one disposition, both for whitening and for reddening successively, that is, for making the palliative. Therefore, if you truly and well direct the natures, and well couple their composition, and join kin to kin suitably, you will complete the whole work. For natures opposing their own natures follow and exalt them, for our nature governs, nature destroys nature, melts it, and reduces it to powder, then nature recreates nature, generates and renews it until the end of the work is reached. However, because the form is given according to the merit of the matter, nothing can work properly with an unprepared nature. The best mode of preparation is to remove the superfluous and supply what is absent, thus both the whole and the corrupt are renewed to a perfect state. And this is like dry trees, which are not suitable in any way until they have received the heavenly color of Mercury. Take especial care in its change from privation of its virtue lest the active force be suffocated in any part. For the seeds of all earthly things do not multiply or grow if their generative force is removed by excessive heat from foreign causes. Likewise, this nature will not multiply if improperly prepared, but do not take the nature except pure, clean, raw, pleasant, flowing, sincere, and correct. If you have made a fetus, it will profit nothing, its addition is better purified by cement. When you wish to make the intention, dissolve in it the lunar nature, for the first step of its preparation is to become Mercury, and this will not happen until you soften it by the domination of water and the continuous motion of heat. There must be much water and much sky, because as great as the quantity of water is, so great is the tincture. We dissolve gold that it may be reduced to its first matter, that is, that it truly becomes sulfur and living silver, because from this we can best make silver and gold when converted into the nature of sulfur, which must be washed and decocted to be true sulfur and silver, for according to the philosophers these are the first matter of all metals. And certainly our solution is nothing else than that the body returns to moisture, and the nature of the living agent is revealed therein, and its saltiness of sulfur is diminished. It does not revert to water or cloud as some foolish ones thought, for if it reverted to such water, it would be without conversion by force of nature, like salts and alum. And thus when the regular places would worthily turn into glass, that is false and their work is false. Now the innermost note concerning the solution, our solution is that you give Gabricus to Bea and that conjugation is made, and without Bea, lying with her, it immediately dies and is transferred to its nature. Then after many days have passed, it rises upon Bea, transferring her into its body, and although Bea is female, Gabricus improves her because he is from her, and because the force of Gabricus is dearer than Bea. Know, however, that there is no generation without her, for no generation is perfected without the male and seed. Therefore join our red servant, sister of the fragrant one, and between them let art be begotten. Placed then in its vessel, warmly and diligently, decoct continuously over gentle fire until they become a marked broth, for from natural principles it is clear that all things whose root is earth and water dissolve and become flowing. And certainly according to the philosopher, earth is water when the qualities of water overcome it, and water is earth when the qualities of earth overcome it. Thus the solution of the body is the freezing of the spirit, and the freezing of the spirit is the solution of the body, for they have one operation, that one is not dissolved unless the other is frozen. Therefore add a poisonous leaf, as it is written to you in the beginning of the work, yet from the rotation of the heavens let it be fortunate and in the fortunate germinance of the earth. Therefore, at the beginning of your work, unite the solution through the sun, for the effect will appear thence, and that which is above is pressed down when it helps that which is below, or the higher things are enlivened if indeed the lower dominate the higher. Therefore be patient in your regimen, firmly close the vessel and do not cease, because no generation or corruption of things occurs except through continuous motion, exclusion of air, and tempered heat. The example of this is the womb of a woman, which when she conceives is immediately closed, and by the warmth and moisture of the blood the fetus is generated, yet it never receives foreign states until the infant is born. Likewise, in the same way, our stone continually remains closed in the vessel until it has drunk its moisture and has been perfectly nourished by the heat of the fire. For then the white stone is born, and the aerial vapors do not harm it. It is therefore most necessary to continue the operation, moderate the fire, exclude the air, and especially burn our copper with a gentle fire until it hardens, just as in beating eggs, until its body is hardened and the tincture extracted. But it is not extracted all at once, little by little it emerges every day until it is completed over a long time. What dissolves always comes out above, although the residue is greater below, therefore, always keep a strong fire so as not to reach the solution before the necessary time, for this leads the work to distant removals, depriving it of sense, operation, and motion. Note therefore the beginning concerning gentle heat and philosophical grinding, which is to be done with fire alone and not by hands. Intense heat destroys the composition, cold drives away, but gentle heat nourishes and preserves. Therefore, having placed it in a tempered bath, rub it with fire and not with hands, wash it with the humidity of its water so that its fiery virtue is not burnt nor its sulphureous substance consumed, for that first which comes out by separation is milder and more worthy of operation than the virtues of the other elements. Now note the signs of true dissolution. Therefore continue the tempered bath upon it until the impalpable matter dissolves in the water and the whole tincture emerges in the color of blackness, which is the sign of true dissolution. For the acting heat in moisture first generates blackness, and in dryness operates whiteness, and in whiteness yellowness, as is seen in lead when it becomes tin. Therefore, govern it continually with fire and the moisture, do not hasten nor cease the work until it is entirely distilled and the powder is wholly spiritual. What is spiritual powder rises in the vessel, and what is thick and coarse remains below. Note therefore the sign of true grinding of body with spirit, for unless you turn all into spiritual powder, you have not converted it. Therefore, afterward grind them until they are converted and all become powder, and note how this is done by fire and not by hands. Grinding of the decoction is not by hands, which only has to be done by gentle decoction, moist pure cooling, and continual grinding by fire and not by hands, for hand grinding is unnecessary. Certainly there is an alkein in this, and through it the work is perfected, which alkein is true, that is, which produces secret generation in the earth, just as alkein in man, by its preparative virtue, always clarifies and divides as it knows, and rightly so, for nature is wise and self-sufficient in all it needs. Its work is indeed to convert earth into water and water into earth, according to the diverse composition. First note how to dissolve earth with water, second, how earth coagulates water. This will occur within 140 days, for first, water tries to dissolve earth, that it may have the nature of its subtlety, second, earth coagulates water so as to sustain fire with itself. This is the solution of the body and the coagulation of the spirit by gentle decoction in 140 days, and perhaps whiteness will appear in 40 days. But the first is better, since it signifies temperance of fire and goodness of preparation. However, nothing acts in them except our sulfur, for our sulfur blackens itself, consumes and burns, and that which consists of its own nature, what is blackened is what is not fixed. It opened the gate and turning not fleeing with the fleeing, yet its torment does not torment nor harm nor corrupt but unites and benefits. For if its torment were harmful and unsuitable, I would not embrace it nor extract colors from it which we have diminished by the water of sulfur. Therefore, the blackening which we say is the key of the work, since nothing is done without blackness, for it is the tincture we seek, by which we are known in every body, which before is hidden in its air like a soul in a human body. Therefore, unless our copper is broken down, imbued, and extracted and carefully governed until it is extracted from its spirituality and turned into a thin impalpable spirit, and unless bodies are turned into non-bodies and non-bodies into bodies, no rule of the work is found. And that because we cannot extract that most subtle soul containing all tincture from its body unless first it is broken down and turned into a thin impalpable spirit, and the body dissolved having its parts ground by fire and water. But our water is fire, burning bodies more than fire, and therefore it governs by itself and extracts all nature from it, overcoming nature. And therefore, patiently continuing the decoction in all its states of operation until the whole tincture comes out above the water in the color of liquid fish, and when you see the blackness emerging, know then that the fire must be raised above it until the water receives the mist which produces darkness. The intention of the philosophers is that the body already dissolved into its powder should enter the water and become entirely like powder and like the powder of water. Know that this powder is none other than the water of sulfur dissolved by the heat of fire, therefore, by merit it takes water as its own nature, and therefore unless it is turned into water, it never reaches perfection. Note, however, that nothing should be added in the mixture nor in the entire regimen except its own proper water, because it is never appropriate to use anything else in the mixture, grinding, or the whole regimen except that single permanent water well known. For its power is a spiritual blood without which nothing is made. Now this is converted into body, and the body by this same is turned into spirit, for thus mutually mixed and made one, they turn each other. So the body incorporates the spirit. Note, however, that the spirit colors the body in the color of fire. Therefore the spirit turns the body tinctured in spirit, just as blood does, for whatever has spirit also has blood. Wherefore it is necessary that the water be constantly occupied with gentle fire up to its imminent blackness, until it is reunited in its water, and water is made into water, that is, until the whole becomes one water. But when water is mixed with other water, then water fills water so that they cannot be separated from each other. Those who are ignorant, hearing water, might think it to be the water of clouds, but if they have reason and knowledge, they certainly know it is permanent water, which without its own body, with which it is dissolved and made one, cannot exist permanently. This water philosophers call the water of gold, the fiery poison, and the egg of many little names. Therefore, when we have this sulphurous water, we must mix another with it so that its blackness is removed. Return therefore the charcoal to its own water so that it may be extinguished in it and conception of things be made, and the vessel be continually closed while it is congealing. Note that here it speaks of conception, which must be made within 3 days. The time of its conception is the space of 3 days, which are the conception of species, the mixture of things, the copulation of form and generation. The seeds are mixed like milk when it appears mixed. Therefore, whoever knows how to lead, impregnate, generate, mortify, revive, judge, and further change from blackness and darkness will be of greatest dignity for us crowned king, joining with the daughter of our ruby, and adhering to her in gentle fire, will conceive and give birth to a son, for the clouds which were upon her return into their own body just as they went out. Therefore, tincturing what must be divided, that which is mixed with itself overcomes and turns its color into itself, and in a certain manner superficially it seems to be conquered, but inwardly it overcomes. Therefore, when mixed and contained with the body, so that the whole is turned with it into spirit and tinctured by spiritual nature, doubling occurs in the dreadful space of days again, the permanent water freed from blackness, which indeed if governed properly does not remain longer than 42 days. Therefore, governing it in its bath, subject it to fire until it becomes clear water and like true living quicksilver ascending into the air. Now note the distillation of water. When therefore you see the nature of water becoming and sublimating into air, then all vapors are made, for the soul is separated from the body and carried into spirit by sublimation. Both escaping are made. Water has opened the door of flight, not fleeing itself, turning it into spirit similar to itself, whence aerial spirits are made, ascending together into the air, where they receive life and are inspired by their own moisture just as man is by the air. Therefore it grows and multiplies in its kind like other things. By right, vapor contains vapor because both are joined together in decoction, that is the fleeing nature, although in essential flight, they relinquish the servitude of flight, because in sublimation they are joined to each other. Therefore, the whole must be often raised by moderate fire into vapor, so that it may be inspired by air and able to live, for the life of all things that coexist by nature consists in the inspiration of air. Therefore the whole work consists in vapor and the sublimation of its water. Yet be very cautious in all sublimation or liquefaction not to break or overturn your vessel, because if you ignite the fire only so much that the water rises to the top of the vessel, delighting in cooling, it will stick there, and thus will not perfect the sublimation of the elements. For each of their wheels must be repeatedly depressed and raised in a spherical manner by itself, but what ascends violently without violence does not descend. Therefore let the fire be slow so that throughout the work it may ascend and descend freely without adhering to the vessel. Therefore, unless we attenuate body by fire and water until it ascends as spirit, we will do nothing, but when it ascends into air, it is born and turned into air, and life is made with life so that one is not separated from the other, just as water mixed with water. Therefore, born in the air, it is wisely born because it is made altogether spiritual. Understand furthermore that we perform sublimation for 3 reasons. First, that the body may become spirit by the subtlety of nature. Second, that the spirit may be incorporated with the body and be one with it. Third, that all things may become white and pure, and the falsity of sulfur be diminished, for at sublimation whatever in the work is combustible is burned. And certainly we are noble, and it is necessary that the elements become simple and may be joined together. Such great simplicities cannot be made unless they are separated into parts. Therefore, you must frequently apply the vapor to be sublimated, until the water descends by filtration. We filter things 7 times with a spherical sieve so that all become clear, pure water, for the body never lets go of the soul and be separated, which is proper to itself, being in simple proximity, and so we refine their sublimation so that nature is reduced to subtlety. But some shrewdly suppose that separation is made into many species, about which do not trouble yourself, for you will hasten to reduce the operation to the equality of the simple and not that each individual thing is separated into the elements. And certainly it is not difficult to reduce all things to the simple from which you must proceed. Its father is the sun, and its mother the moon, the wind carried it in its belly, and the earth was paved from it. You have been deceived that water should be distilled from air, and air from fire, and fire from earth, for from much iteration of sublimation the soul ascending from water is purified, and its coarseness descending to the lowest is lunar in the earth. If then from fire you make earth, and from air water, you reduce that over the earth, for its force meanwhile truly will have been in the earth, therefore turn earth into water, and water into fire, then truly fire into air, and hidden fire into the innermost of water, and earth truly into the belly of air, but the hot with the moist, and the dry with the cold. In this manner therefore make the mixture, for there is no transition from the extreme to the extreme except through the middle. The eagle therefore flying through the air and progressing upon the earth is the mastery, therefore you will separate earth from fire subtly from the dense, gently distilling with a great skill. It ascends from the earth to the sky, and again descends into the earth. It receives the superior power of spirit and the inferior of body, because it conquers every subtle thing by freezing and penetrates every solid thing by altering. Thus it rules over the higher and the lower because it works both in spirits and bodies. Here note closely about spirit, soul, and body. It is clear therefore that our bronze has spirit, body, and soul. The spirit is its water, the soul its tincture, but the body its earth. The spirit is the revealer of the virtues of the soul over the body, just as the tincture is carried by the water over the cloth, but the soul is the bond of the spirit, just as the body is the bond of the soul. The body is fixed, dry, containing spirit and soul. Therefore, the spirit penetrates, the body fixes, the soul joins, tinctures, and whitens. In these three is smoke, blackness, and death, which if not removed will not be perpetual. Therefore it is necessary that blackness be taken away from the water, blackness from the soul, and death be expelled from the body by frequent dissolutions which do not separate them. But concerning him who does not make two sulfurs from sulfur, he knows nothing of sulfur. There are two sulfurs, sublimated from a mixed or joined stone to the tincture, which indeed colors and flees, but is contained by the sulfur so that it cannot flee, for of all fixatives is connection. Therefore, mix the eggs of black hens with air, and you will have gold and silver as much as you yourself desire. For the vulture flying without wings over the mountain cries out, saying, I am white, black, and red, the white and serene son of the red, truthful and not lying. Therefore join me to my mother and to her breast, for I make her substance contain itself. Do not introduce anything alien to us, nor cease from the work, for all nature is joined to its own partner and perfected through it. My mother begot me, and through me she is born, for at first she ruled over me, but henceforth I will rule over her, because she pursues me that she may love me, and I was made from my mother before I received flight from her. Yet she cherishes and nourishes the son she begot in the best manner she can, like a mother, until I arrive at perfect status. Therefore place me in the moist fire continually, for the warmth of the moisture increases, and the burning of dryness does not prevent it until it brings the work to an end. Then extract rust and shadow from me until the third part remains, for the decoction diminishes me, but the triturated increases, and what after 15 days diminishes, after 30 increases. This is the beginning and the end. Keep the living silver in its innermost chamber in which it is coagulated, for from repeated filtration unless by chance, white water ascends with the soul to the alembic and the body gradually descends to unity. This is the living silver which is called the residual earth that receives water and drinks it, because it is the connection of tinctures. Therefore preserve the vessel and its ligature, so that you may be powerful in the conservation of the spirit, for the water which was before in the air dwells now in the earth. If it cannot flee, then return it to the upper regions and through its boundaries, not inappropriately, then join it to its previously chosen red body by you. For wherever the body is, waters will be gathered, because if it rises without violence, it will descend without violence on it, if not, then it will not. Bind therefore the hands of a nursing woman behind her back so that the Gabricium does not flee. Although alive, she places her son whom she begot to nurse him, for when the woman is dead, a thick toad will be made from the milk, then cut the toad in half, placing a chicken to eat it. Reduce the water to temperate earth, administering to it as far as it makes a root in nature, knowing for certain that it must first be nourished with a little milk, as though you saw it even if it is a child to be nourished by a little milk and fire while it is small, and the more it grows, the more it needs food and heat until it drinks its moisture. For the first of the humors is cold, therefore the fire is needed which is hostile to the cold. If you place the body on the fire without vinegar, it will burn and what is sought will not be made, for if the fire did not find moisture to dry, the body burns, but vinegar placed nearby prevents combustion by the fire, drying itself with the body so that it does not suffer injury. And the more it is occupied by great flames, the more it is hidden in the innermost parts of the water so that it is not burned by the heat of the fire. Here note the proportion and weight of water and body. Therefore I command not to pour in at once the water in which the elixir is submerged, but to pour it little by little so that the body is separated and boiled with 3 parts of its own water, for if cast in without weight, death will happen to it, which when it happens will be considered evil, but if properly governed with its part, it will be made as if above the fire. But because the body at first has little root, whose poison does not equally abound in all parts, just as the brightness of the sun is not equal in the planets, therefore patience and delay are necessary, so that by length of cooking water may overcome the purgation of fire, for mild fire by cooking freezes water and extracts the corruptive humidity, the heat of the radical humor is increased, and the dryness of evaporation is prevented. I therefore command that our fire at the beginning be gentle, until water coagulates into stone and the whole body becomes in the lower region. For 40 days all the water will turn into earth. Therefore, when you see the water coagulate on the 7th day, then consider that the knowledge is true, for the coagulated body retains its moisture in the dry, just as the coagulum of water coagulates milk into cheese. Therefore cook the body slowly with the water of life by coagulating over the fire until it becomes thick and very dry, for when it is dry it quickly drinks the residue of its own moisture. Then apply another water and gently cook over the fire, close the vessel carefully, do not hasten nor abandon the work. Yet the water must be divided into its parts, of which one part coagulates the body, another putrefies and liquefies it. To coagulate is to reduce the aqueous substance to earth, to putrefy is to dissolve the coagulated otherwise, for putrefaction is nothing but the mixing of moisture and dryness, thus the spirit penetrates the body and mingling is made through the smallest parts. But the fire administered must be subtle and tempered, take care also that it is not extracted too hastily from its vessel, for it would die, as the infant will never obey going out until the aerial breaths are expelled. Therefore keep the container closed with restraint, and do not wander about with others, above all be cautious lest its flowers be stolen in the smoke. Cook, boil, repeat, and do not be wearied to repeat the same several times. But in the workplace yourself, and once apply all care, so that as often as the body is imbued, so often it dries. Yet do not eat hastily, nor eat what you do not drink, nor drink what you do not eat. Let the drinking be after custom, not custom after drinking, otherwise you will make the belly moist and it will not receive dryness. Therefore eat and drink one after the other according to reason, I say 1 in 3 and 6, up to 12 in the moon's phases. This number comes from the multiplication of 3 by 4 and will be 12, and the number 3 comes from unity into 3, and these are 3 leaps, each of which divides into 3 other leaps, and they will be 12. Therefore turn the square into a circle and you will have the mastery, and this indeed is if the square has in both its spatulas 3 equal angles. Make a circle and in the middle of the circle a center, then in each space of the circle make 3 angles from the circle's center. Let the line from the first center to the other points be equal and uniform, and 1 be the measure of all ternaries. By compacting 3s and 12s you will find, above which draw the compass and find what touches each ternary. Through 12 triangles the circle will be round, thus the mastery is composed, because thus all spatulas meet at the center of the compass. Thus the whole sought body must be reduced through its ternaries, if diminished by 1, its power will diminish by 1. Hunt therefore the souls, for their dwelling is in the earth, if they cannot flee, be slow in the hunt, beware lest by too much fire they be turned upward. If they flee, they will not be caught with a falcon. If confined and do not flee, then they return to the body whence they came, because the body attracts its moisture like a magnet attracts iron. Grind the earth and boil with water and chalk in operation until one of the 3 ternaries turns beautiful, for if you kill one of the 3, all are dead. Because if one flees and the other constantly suffers, both joined suffer the fire. Here note what it is that fixes the spirit. I say one contains the rest because of the nearness of its nature, and this is our analogy, every flying thing holding back from fleeing. However, this is not done by hands, but nature operates circularly on it, for nature dissolves and coagulates itself, makes itself white and red and adorns itself, burns and dries itself and anoints itself, betroths itself and conceives from itself, until it brings the work to an end. Although this custom is not manual operation, but the mutation of natures and their admirable connection of heat with cold, and moisture with dryness. Therefore take the volatile flying submerged and manifest that it responds to you not by flying in the regions but by flight flying to you content, for what is below is as what is above, and what is above is as what is below. Therefore our blessed water comes to the earth of water to cleanse the blackness and take away all evil odor, because between them is a desire like that of sea and woman. Beware therefore that its moisture does not leave the vessel and perish, rather reduce it to earth by coagulating with gentle fire, just as semen coagulates in the womb, for the woman having embraced her husband passes more quickly into the body. Therefore turn the water upon its own earth until it coagulates beautifully, for then more swiftly it is turned by nature into nature and in each step of its operations assumes a new nature. Return its sweat to the ash, grind it, boil it, repeat and do not be wearied to repeat, for the earth does not germinate without frequent watering, nor without prior drying, therefore at every time after drying sprinkle the earth temperately with water, neither too much nor too little, because if too much there will be a sea of confusion, if too little, it will burn to embers. Note this carefully. Therefore in every weight keep the weight, in every measure keep the measure, and in every work keep the work, so that neither excessive dryness nor superfluous moisture corrupts it, but only by gentle heating may you boil off as much as dissolution has added and imbibition has set down. Always be cautious lest the harshness of fire produce burning, and do not cease action until the whole takes on the form of a physical stone. However, nature has no motion except by the action of heat. Note therefore the utility of measuring the fire. If you measure the heat well, water and fire will suffice for you, for they cleanse the body, purify it, nourish it, and remove its obscurity, and certainly the whole work and regimen consists only in permanent water, containing all that it needs, for it liquefies and freezes, dissolves and whitens. And you should never use anything else in the entire regimen except this permanent water. Hold this water in your hand with its good operations, because it makes white to white and red to red. Its effect, however, consists in the regimen of fire, for water is divided with it, volatile things are retained from flight, the soul is joined to the body with it, and our coagulation is made with it. Beware, however, the intensity of the fire, because if you intensify before the time it becomes red, which does not benefit, this word of mine remember and truly commend and grasp. Let the fire be slow up to whiteness. Look many times how you make the spouses embrace, for the spirits are to be bound with strong bonds, so that strengthened they prick against the fire. For if a wandering woman seeks exit, you seek embraces of strangers and she flees, if truly enclosed so that she cannot flee, then returning to the husband with whom she copulated, whom she killed, but that heated one consumes her moisture, making her stay with him. For spirits taken away from bodies desire to be in them, they follow them, rejoice in possessing them, dwell in them, give them life, and never separate from them. Therefore they do not contribute sperm to the vulva in vain, since one follows the rest as a bride follows the bridegroom, and one constitutes marriage. Here note concerning the mortification of the living spirit and the revivification of the dead body. Therefore, vivifying the dead, that is, the body, kill the living, that is, the spirit, and you will have mastery. Extract from the ray its shadow and filth, and that which its overlying mist pollutes and retains from the light, by which it is constricted and detained by its rust. Therefore, in the first part of this water our copper must burn and by cooking coagulate until it becomes red in its own nature, which then is called the ferment of gold and the coagulum of the coagulum, because it receives water and drinks it coagulated with it into the earth. And in this is the end of the first operation and the beginning of the second, since it begins and ends in one way. The mode of the reddening of the stone is the aforementioned one, and that you must imbue its residual water many times to incorporate the coagulated, to purify the burnt, and to change the color, until all the water turns downward. Therefore imbue it 7 times one after another, cleansing the blackness, until it is dissolved and turned into earth, for in 40 days the whole turns into earth. Open and close, dissolve and note, extend and fold, wash and dry, do this continuously until it turns from square to round. Thus similarly you will resolve the copper governed by the mode until it becomes water and true living silver. After this, coagulate by the usual manner over the fire. We say coagulate by custom because before it was a dry red coagulum, therefore, when it is dry, dissolve what is soluble from it, and what is not soluble continue with what dissolves until you return to one. Thus in this order by reiterating, repeat until its quantity is greater, then coagulate and gently roast under temperate fire, conserving it until the greater is administered according to its demand. All these orders of preparation upon the fire must be abraded 4 times intimately by the knowledge of the hand of signs that signs and calcines, because thus the most precious earth of the stone sufficiently emerges. And indeed calcination is nothing else but drying and turning into ash, therefore burn it without moisture until it becomes ash. It has mixed well, because that ash receives the spirit and drinks it and imbues itself with its moisture, until it changes to a color more beautiful than it was before. Oh, how precious is the ash! Dearly beloved, do not despise this ash but give it again its sweat which it expelled, until the whole turns downward, for as often as the ash is imbued it is dried by turns, and holds itself mutually. Therefore it is necessary to grind them, to imbue them many times with the water of life, and alternately dry them, until the whole has drunk the moisture. I command then the living water to coagulate, to mix with its body, and wherever it may fail, then you will find all the living water coagulated by itself and contained in the earth. Then the spirit is joined to the body, water to ash, and woman to man, because when it is properly governed, it is pacified with water and colored with white color. Take good note about the washing of the body through the spirit. Our whitening is made by decoction and freezing of the water, and the more often they are washed, the more intense the whiteness becomes. Therefore, philosophers by repeated decoction and imbibing and grinding most frequently understood this. If one decoction and one grinding had sufficed, they would not have repeated their saying so often. Therefore they made it so that it is ground continually and boiled without interruption. Grind then, repeat, and wash. This must be done many times again and again. With its own air boil the cloud, wash the blackness with the water of life, roast widely until dried and made a new body, for the water of life governs and whitens every body, turning all into its own color. For that smoke is white, therefore with it whatever is commanded to be whitened is whitened, because nature turns nature. Therefore let it mingle with itself, cook and grind many times until it coagulates and is freed from its blackness. And certainly the very wet dew water washes, which falls from the sky at the time of rain, penetrates and whitens. That water dwelling in the air follows the earth just as nature follows things with a magnet. Likewise there is indeed a society and desire, because of the closeness of their nature, for natures meeting their own natures rejoice in them. Therefore impose the residual moisture by continual cooking until it coagulates and whitens enough. You will certainly know if it is dry and strongly drinks the moisture of the dew likewise. Consider then how the composition drinks water, and in each degree the color changes, while the thing which whitens thus grows above, from color to color nature operates and transfers. Note about the union of spirit and soul with the body as symbolized by the stone. The spirit and soul are not united with the body except in the white color, because as long as the blackness appears, the dark obscure woman dominates. And indeed this is the first force of our stone, for unless it is black it will not become white nor red. For red is composed of black and white. However, tempered by heat acting in moisture it works the blackness, dries the moisture and removes corruption. On the contrary, increasing heat works the redness, drives away moisture, and generates causes and corruption. Therefore it is clear that if the compound is governed more than it ought, it is immediately extinguished and what is sought will not come forth. Therefore beware lest water turn to flight by too much fire and flee, therefore let there be a contest of water and fire in the proximity of cooking. For just as water is dried by the heat of the sun, so by gentle cooking coagulated water keeps itself in the earth against the fight of fire. Let water win the fight of fire by the prolongation of cooking, thickening, and coagulation. For if you perfectly understood its nature, you would certainly endure prolonged cooking until you find your aim. Because the goodness of this venerable nature is proven especially in bodies, since for no cause of destruction it allows itself to be divided into parts of its composition. Because either it entirely withdraws its substance from fire, or it entirely remains in the fire standing, which is turned in it for the cause of perfection necessarily. Here note the governance of the freezing of Mercury with the sun, because it is said that it is pure water and true tincture, patiently governed ascending and descending until coagulated into white. Therefore govern this nature patiently, gently coagulating the living silver which rains from our air upon it. Bitter clouds rise and rains fall upon the earth, because every heavy and dense body always flows to its own center. Certainly the living silver sublimated from our air, from which all things are made, is pure water and true tincture, which removes the shadow of the air. It is similarly the white sulfur which alone whitens the copper, so that the spirit does not continually flee. However, that sulfur could not whiten unless it were whitened in the prior work. Because only sulfur whitens copper, which shows that the beauty of the air will be as great as the whiteness of the sulfur. Therefore wishing to reach the true tincture, let him put upon himself gradual moisture which is expelled by constant cooking until it takes on a more beautiful color. And as often as it is wetted, so often is it dried by turns, until it turns into the white sought. For the uncertain contains drying within itself, and if one is fixed the other is fixed. And if it is white externally it is white inside also, therefore never cease to imbue, cook, and gradually dry it, until it is imbued with moisture wholly. Complete it with permanent water, and gently boil over fire until it enters and recedes. Imbue it continually with water of life as you see enough by sight, roast and cook until the whole drinks the moisture. Know that purple color is dyed only by cold, nor does white form except dry, nor red except by heat. Therefore by roasting cook it with its moisture until it makes itself germinate, then dry it in the sun and also grind it until the whole turns downward. Honor the king and his wife, and do not burn them, lest they flee by too much heat, for patience and long-suffering are needed, which amend the king and his wife in the regimen. Cook them until they become black, then white, then red, and then a poison is made dyeing into gold. Our copper at first the more it is cooked the more it dissolves, and becomes a more spiritual water. Second, the more it is cooked the more it thickens, and thus powder of a whiter color. Third, the more it is cooked the more it colors and tinctures with greater redness. And this whole operation is nothing but extraction of water from the earth and its remission above the earth. Therefore all the water being exhausted and contained in the earth for some days, that is for 60, let it be putrefied in its vessel over a gentle fire, until a more precious white color appears on top. Let the heat be gentle until whiteness, because if the heat is intense it produces black vapor and white flees the compound, for that vapor is white. Therefore if it fixes with the air it whitens it inside and outside. If it flees from it, it turns red which does not benefit. And certainly in putrefaction spirits dry therein, since unless dried with air the colors of the soul do not appear. For putrefaction is nothing but mortification of moisture with dryness, for moisture coagulates with dryness, cold then only putrefies moisture. But our putrefaction is not without moisture and dryness, because moisture is contained by dryness only. Although naturally cold moisture flees fire, yet it is retained by the body so that it cannot flee. Because heavy things cannot be raised except by the lighter consort above, nor light things be pushed down except by the consort of the heavy below. And both are the beginning and end of the work. Therefore diligent administration, continual abstinence, and patient expectation are present. Let the law return from declaration, and thus one declaration will come forth. Therefore govern the work continually, boil without interruption, do not hurry nor cease the work. Because moisture is the womb and heat is the continual coitus, the seed would not remain nor the fetus continue. For when the mother dies the fetus dies too by the imminent cold. Therefore God established that blood and color of the womb to nourish the fetus until the time of maturity. Thus the whole work must be governed by continual heat until whiteness. For only in the white color are spirits conquered with the body so that they cannot flee. There it begins to live, and alien winds do no harm to it, nor can it proceed worse toward redness. Also note here about nourishment through very gentle fire, around which the heat of the fire is like eggs under the belly of hens. Therefore, a bath of intense heat causes perish, cold drives away, but lukewarm heat nourishes and preserves. Therefore it is necessary to govern gently as for the hatching of eggs until everything is white. Therefore it is commanded to whiten the laton, an alloy of copper and zinc, and to break the books, but let not hearts be broken. But when earth with water putrefies and is purified, and when the blackness having been dried recedes and is whitened, then the dark dominion of the woman will perish, and then the man ascending over the woman will take away her kingdom. Then the smoke will penetrate the body and the spirit be bound in dryness. Then the black which corrupts deformity will cease and it will become white, bright, and clear. Because heat acting in moisture first produces blackness, thus acting in dryness produces whiteness, and in white, it produces yellowness. An example is in burning wood when it is made into charcoal, and thus the substance of our stone. The more it is cooked the more it dissolves and blackens. The more it is dried the more it whitens. The more it is cooked the more it reddens until perfected. Therefore the thing whose head is red, feet white, and eyes black is the mastery. That the work must first be blackened is proven by this. that the generation of one is only by the corruption of another. And corruption is not made except by putrefaction and heat acting in moisture. And heat acting in moisture makes the ingredient. Therefore it is clear that the beginning of our work is the head of the raven. It is likewise necessary that it putrefies. Because nothing was ever born, nor grew, nor was animated unless it first went into putrefaction. For if it were not putrid, it could not be founded nor dissolved. If it were not dissolved, it would be reduced to nothing. Therefore putrefaction is necessary to us for all generation. However, our putrefaction is not foul and filthy, but a mixture of earth with water. And with the earth by the smallest and gentlest cooking a poisonous body is made. Therefore cook the male and wife together until both congeal into dryness. Because if it is not dry, bright colors will not appear at all, which will always be black while the moist dominates. Therefore carefully closing the mouth of the vessel, cook over the fire until the whole turns downward. Then the dragon will eat its wings and emit various colors. Often it will be moved by different ways and turns from color to color until it arrives at firm whiteness. For all the colors of the world appear when the blackening moisture is dried. But you should not care about those colors because they are not true colors. For often it becomes yellowish and reddens, and often it dries and liquefies before the true whiteness. However, the spirit is not fixed with the body except in the white color. Therefore it is clear that whitening must always be awaited. Because it is the completion of the whole work, and afterwards it does not vary into a true color except into redness. In the work, therefore, observe the stages carefully, how water coagulates itself, and how the composition changes from one color to another. Because if the colors of the work are covered or concealed unknowingly, nothing will be seen. And thus you will often abandon your labor, because you will not know at what stage the fire must be moderated, which can only be known through the colors appearing in the work. Therefore the colors will teach you what to do with the fire, for they show how long and how the first, second, and third fires are to be made. Thus, if you are diligent, the colors will teach you what ought to be done. Therefore take good note of the fire and its proportions at its stages. Because fire is always gentle in solution and coagulation, moderate in sublimation, and strong in reddening. But the more the colors vary, the gentler the fire must be continued until it reaches the goal of whiteness. For to white we do not apply much fire, because it is cold, raw, and half-cooked. Let the fire be gentle in whitening, so that the vapor be sealed with its body. Otherwise, if you intensify the fire, before the end it will become red, which is not beneficial. Because red is composed of much white and very little black with great heat. If you have measured the fire well and governed the operation sparingly, you will first reach the white color, and when the white is sufficiently white, then increase the fire stronger. Apply dry heat beneath and above it for several days so that the whole fixes downward. And no sublimation of spirit ascends above, which is the sign of perfect drying. Then the fleeing spirit will not escape from the non-fleeing body, as if inspired by fixation. Because when fixed, Magnesia does not permit the spirit to flee, nor does the shadow of air appear. This is truth. For it is fixed white sulfur that stains and perfects every body and converts it into true silver. Therefore, if it be living pure silver, the power of this white sulfur coagulates it into silver. And this is the best thing the practitioners of alchemy can receive, that it be converted into silver. Because then nature contains nature, and by true marriage they are joined together. But it is only one single nature, which in one stage of its operations turns into another nature. Because nature rejoices, nature overcomes nature, and nature contains nature, teaching it to battle against fire. There are not then diverse putrefactions, but only one nature having within itself all natures and things sufficient to itself. Therefore the work begins and ends by one order. Yet there is a twofold mode of composition, because one is moist, the other dry. But when they coagulate, they become one, and one does not reject the other, and rightly so. Because the moist easily takes an impression and easily lets it go. But the dry receives an impression heavily and lets it go heavily. Therefore, when moist and dry temper themselves mutually, the dry will obtain the form of the impression from the moist, and the moist acquires from the dry so as to firmly retain every impression sustaining the fire. Thus the moist prohibits the dry from its separation, and the dry prohibits the moist from its fluidity. An example is the work if someone cooks earth with water over the fire so that one does not reject the other, do likewise with our masterwork, disposing the earthly substance by moisture and heat until they agree and are joined, and do not separate or divide. Therefore note the two operative virtues of water and fire by which the work is completed. Then add to them two operative virtues, water and fire, and the mastery will be complete. If you allow only water, it will whiten, and if you add fire, it will redden. Also note well that the white work is completed in 3 turns, in which there is no fire. The red work, however, in 4 turns, in which fire cannot be delayed. Therefore white is completed in 3 turns in which there is no fire. Red is turned 4 times, and also the elixir that stains with its tincture is joined with oil and fixed with lime. Oil is what joins and aggregates between lime and water. Water is the bearer of the tincture over its lime. And when the lime is fixed, the water will also be fixed because of the strength of their mixture. The soul is the bond as the body is the bond of the soul. And this is not in the compound if it is the bond of nature, but like a body outside the body it consists. And nature exists by the ingress of opposites. And our body is through the fixation of compounds. Then the body will also retain water, and water oil which does not burn upon fire. And oil is the cause of holding the tincture. And tincture is the cause of producing visible color. And color is the cause of showing whiteness. And whiteness is the cause of retaining every volatile and flight. For when the body has been whitened, the spirit does not allow anything above it, nor does blackness appear further. Therefore, whoever does not liquefy and coagulate properly errs greatly, because by blackening the earth and separating its soul, he must afterward cause it to return by water upon the earth, whitening the whole, and then you have the mastery. Not the one who blackens the earth and dissolves and coagulates the white with fire until it is in a color like a naked sword and freed from darkness. And who, with complete whitening, introduces the soul, and after all is liquefied, fixes it in rapid fire, deserves to be called fortunate and to be exalted above the circles of the world. Now you have learned, most dear, to make the white work. Therefore, you will not be able to make the red yet, because no one can pass from the first to the third except he first be in the second. Likewise, you cannot pass from black to yellow except through white, because yellow is composed of much white and very little black. Just as the year is divided into 4 parts, so is our blessed work. The first is winter, a humid and cold time. The second is spring, dry and flowering. The third is summer, a warm time. The fourth is autumn, the time of fruits. With this order, encompass the natures until nature brings forth fruit at the proper time. But winter has now passed, the rain gone, night receded, and day approached. For flowers appear in our earth at the time of spring. But standing upon the white dew the sun is sought, because it alone produces the effect of turning every sick body into true silver. Therefore, when you see that whiteness appear and surpass all others, be assured that redness is hidden in that whiteness. And you ought not to extract that whiteness until it coagulates into one, until it becomes red. And certainly, the redder the red, the stronger it is. And the more cooked it is, the redder it is, therefore the more cooked it is, the stronger it is. And so by consequence, the strongest and indeed the greatest. And certainly the red color is caused solely by the completion of digestion. For blood is not generated in man unless first carefully cooked in the liver. So in the morning when we see our urine white, all expenses of the day having slept at home. But when sleep has been received, digestion is completed, and our urine turns yellow. By only decoction after whiteness you will arrive at redness. And you err if you cannot, if you continue dry fire upon it. Do you not see that sperm is not generated from blood unless first carefully cooked in the liver until it has an intense redness? And if these things do not happen, nothing of sperm is generated. Similarly, our white must be carefully cooked or it will not redden. And certainly only the heat of the liver reddens the chyle of the liver. And only the heat of burning fire reddens the white sulfur. For the first digestion of the stomach whitens all. But the second of the liver reddens all. Because in the liver alone heat thrives. Just as dryness thrives in the stomach. Therefore, by dry fire and dry calcination, decoct dry until it becomes like cinnabar. That is purple, to which from now on you will by no means add water or anything else until the red begun is cooked. For at the time of summer and fruits, the flood of rains corrupts the masterwork. Therefore you must burn it with dry fire without fear. Until it is clothed with the most ruddy color. Therefore do not cease, even if redness delays somewhat. For after whiteness with increased fire from the first colors you will have redness. In the meantime, between those colors, a yellow will appear. But that color is not stable, because after it, red does not delay to come. And when it arrives, be certain your work is complete. Because it will have taken the virgin woman into a man. And the master into the perfect son. Therefore the philosopher says, if the true sulfur of the world, best and clear with redness, has the power of simple fire and not burning, that is the best thing that alchemical practitioners can receive. So that with it they may make gold. For this living silver converts every imperfect body into gold. Therefore it is manifestly clear that this alone is our true sulfur, white and red, which we seek. By which in any body we tint it into the truest silver, better than that produced from mineral. Therefore, when you take each species from the parts of the work as we have shown and direct them, then reduce the spirits to it and sublime all. Because it will be sublimed bright and clear, unmingled with elements. And indeed it is as if you take the purest part of that known stone, and by subtle ingenuity join the whole by smallest and lightest means. Which if it does not happen, add to it a quantity of unfixed part. So that the sum of the volatile exceeds the sum of the fixed, until it suffices for elevation. For we have seen in those where there is a sense of experience, that when it is mixed strongly and violently with that which it mixes with, if the sum of volatile overcomes the sum of fixed, the fixed will fly away with it. Therefore when elevated, truly it will be sublimation. Until by this reiteration of sublimation the whole is formed. Therefore, when the fixed is with the non-fixed, repeat sparingly quantity after quantity. Mix with ingenuity known to you until the whole is repeatedly lifted. Thus let the whole be formed repeatedly until it provides easy fusion like wax. And this indeed is the medicine that stands, stains, penetrates, consolidates, and perseveres. One part of which converts 1,000 parts of any body into the truest gold or silver, according as the white or red elixir has been prepared. However, the goodness of this multiplication does not depend except on the repeated reiteration of sublimation and fixation of this medicine. Because the more often the order of this complement is reiterated, the more its abundance is multiplied and the goodness of that perfection greatly increased. Until every body is diminished from perfection and even living silver changes infinitely. Sol silicium or luna silicium truly. For as many times as you sublime the perfect medicine and dissolve it in the usual manner, so many times will you profit every time throwing out 1/10. And if at first you cast over 1,000, the second time it will fall over 10,000, the third over 100,000, the fourth over 1,000,000, and the fifth over infinity. How much more the elixir is refined, so much more it tinctures. Therefore, to the extent that you elevate your work, to that extent it will be more potent, because it will work abundantly and convert a greater quantity. And this is certainly what Geber said, who was the master of masters in our art: work with your stone, and I will work with mine, and my stone will be worth more than yours, because if you cast one in 1,000, I will cast one in 10,000, and it will all be good. But if you cast one in 10,000, I will cast one in 100 million, so my stone will be worth more than yours, because in the transmutation of many thousands, it surpasses your stone. However, Geber said this only to mislead us, because our stone and his are one and the same, it dissolves everything and sublimates multitudes, so that while it works its own operation, it surpasses 10 times that of ours. Therefore, the more sublimated it is, the more power it will have to convert, indeed, the very most power. Do not therefore neglect to refine your elixir as much as you can lighten it, and certainly the cause of its swift liquefaction is the subtle essential liquefaction of those parts by fire, which I call Mercury, drawn down to fixation in its proper nature. The more subtle it is, the more it dissolves, indeed, the very most. And so it is complete, certainly not yet rapidly fusible more than any metal, for it is nothing but the purest substance of living silver reduced to fixation, and from the most subtle and pure fixed matter, which it took its origin from living silver and was created from it. And because, being figuratively living silver, it easily needs some medicine without inflammation which will cling closely before its flight, and be joined to it by the smallest bonds, and keep it fixed by its fixation and preserve it from fleeing in the fire, carrying everything by its benefit instantly to the true sun or moon, according to that for which the elixir was prepared. If it were not easily fusible, it would not melt before the flight of Mercury nor retain it. Know this secret well. If it did not have its own nature, it would not cling deeply nor join by the smallest bonds, for living silver only receives what is of its own nature and nothing else will fix it, and if it were not most pure, it would not convert Mercury or other bodies into gold and silver, because nothing gives what it does not have, as nothing is found in a thing that was not in it before. Therefore it is clear that our medicine necessarily must be of the most subtle and pure substance adhering to living silver by its own nature, and of easiest and finest liquefaction, like water fixed upon the struggle of fire, for this coagulates it and converts it into the solar or lunar nature. Now we complete our medicine, equally tempered in heat and cold, moisture and dryness, so that whatever is added to it if of the same complexion as it is added to, if you add water to it, all will dissolve in water, if fire, all will be fire. This is why the medicine can be multiplied infinitely. Therefore it is like fire in wood, and like moss in good aromatics, growing the more it is suffused with honey, therefore you must leave apart entirely for a time, because you have been enriched by it, as it was enriched benignly by itself. Note therefore carefully about multiplication of the elixir. It is multiplied either by solution or fermentation, but by solution more slowly, by fermentation more quickly. For it does not work well dissolved unless it is first fixed in its ferment. Yet medicine works much more abundantly dissolved than fermented, because it is more subtle, although by fermentation alone it can be multiplied infinitely, but by solution it is much reduced to its own nature, color, and taste in every way, for it whitens the concoction, inhibits combustion, enables tincture to enter and join, which is the end of the operations, and without it the elixir is not completed, just as dough does not ferment without ferment. Therefore, when you have fixed the elixir by sublimation, reduce a body upon it and mix and liquefy by the secret of natures in a philosophical vessel, for when they stand by delay of time, they will more strongly prevail, converting all into a spirit similar to itself, and it itself, being powerful over the bond, does not stand. Here note about the separation of spirit from the body from which it was originally extracted. Therefore you will join it so that it generates a similar body, and do not join it with anything else to convert to itself, except with that from which it was originally. If you do this, the elixir will become that of others which was joined. The reason why it must be joined with its similar is because sulfurs contain sulfurs, and moist things with similar moisture, for the spirit converting sulfurs into a spirit similar to itself was made both fleeing, and the spirits of ether and air ascending together love one another. Seeing therefore the philosophers that it did not flee with the fleeing, it was made to flee to the similar of the body not fleeing, and entered into it from which it could least flee, because of the closeness of their nature's agreement. Note therefore this is true about the ingress of spirit into the body. The soul certainly quickly enters its body, but if sent into another, you labor in vain, because there will be no communication of darkness and light. Therefore the bodies return to bodies from which they were extracted and through which they were completed. Because if the tincturer and the tinctured are made one tincture, do you not think that what tinctures and does not flee is the true tincture of the philosophers? Since sulfurated things tincture and do not flee if they are joined with similar living silver of their kind, therefore it is necessary to mix it with living silver, white or red, of its kind, and contain it so that it does not flee. Therefore we will join living silver and mix it with living silver until they become one pure water composed of two living silvers. Truly in their conjunction putting little of the work upon much of the body, so that it has the power to convert it into medicine, otherwise it would all turn into a spirit similar to itself. If however you cast little work upon much body, say 1 upon 4, the other being in some delay of time a powder whose color will be white or red, according to what it was beneath what you cast upon it, and this powder indeed is the elixir completed. And certainly, the elixir must be a simple powder, superior to the inferior things of this age, and the body and ferment that you put to it must be a subtle powder. Note here that it says 1 part of the work over 4 parts of the body, and the work will be dissolved similarly by itself before they are joined, because you will not at all hasten their mixture until each one is separately dissolved in water, for that which dries before moistening does not join by the smallest bonds nor does it become fully subtle. Indeed, it is easier to separate one from earth than from water. Therefore note that when the body has been dissolved in water, which is never separated from its water, but when water is mixed with water, then water receives water which is never separated from each other. Therefore, if you are dropsical, drink much of this and you will be healed. Note about saffron, croco, and the multiplication of the medicine. Each tincture in 1,000th part will tincture more in a liquid substance than in a dry one, as is evident with saffron when placed in liquids. If cast on dry matter, it would tincture little, but dissolved and joined with a little, and this little with much, it tinctures infinitely. Thus you will make projection, first multiply 10 by 10 and it will be 100, and 100 by 100 and it will be 10,000, and 10,000 by 10,000 and it will be 100 million, and 1,000,000 by 1,000,000 and the number will be innumerable. That is to say, put 1 upon 10, and 1 of those upon 100, and 1 of those upon 1,000, and so on similarly. Again, according to another philosopher, put 1 part upon 10 parts of prepared metal, and of this 1 part upon 100, and it will be converted with a fixed and durable conversion, if God wills. But if you put 1 part upon 1,000 parts at once and at first, beware lest it be consumed by too much heat and exhaled before it has penetrated and been perfected. But when you put 1 upon 10, it penetrates quickly and mixes, so it is not necessary to strengthen or continue the fire, but it must quickly be removed. When it is cooled, it then holds itself with it and adheres because of the agreement of nature. Therefore, if then you cast 1 part upon 100, the substance of the lamp is retained by that with which it is mixed, adhering until it has fully transmuted. Therefore, mix prepared living silver with oils, not because it is the matter of all metals as some affirm and many think, but because by coldness it holds the medicine over the fire until it is mixed so that it does not exhale, thus it guards it and you will be fortunate on earth. The cause of all these things is threefold: goodness, necessity, and perfection. Goodness is that the perfect and very abundant tincture tints, so that it perfects for the better and converts many things. Necessity is the cause that it is better colored, better fixed, and similar to itself by kind as gold or silver, and perfection is a perfect number, 10, 100, and 1,000. Therefore, from the first to the last you will make the projection, for if something small were simply to fight against something large, it would be overcome by it because of its paucity. Note in what follows about the foundations of the medicine. All the foundations of our medicine must be very refined and tincturing, because the more it is refined, the more the elixir tinctures and the more abundantly it works, therefore also the very most. Therefore, for solution put solution, and to the solution add defunctation, decomposition, and put the whole on the fire cautiously, warning against smoke lest something flee from it. The whole management is the tempering of the fire, so stay near the vessel and watch carefully how it moves from color to color in less than an hour of the day until it reaches the goal of whiteness or heat, that is yellowness, for it will melt more quickly in fire and freeze in the air, because when the smoke perceives the fire, it penetrates the body, and the spirit is contracted in the dry, and there will be one fixed clear body, white or red according as the medicine and ferment have been. Then lower the fire, letting it cool, because one part of it cast will be enough for 1,000 parts of any imperfect body to convert it into the best gold or silver according to the elixir that was cast. True white medicine, white elixir, ferment, and likewise red medicine, red elixir, because in red work nothing will enter except red, just as in white work nothing will enter except white. Therefore what you do in white, do also in red, because the operation of both is one and the same, but complicating their tinctures and spirits is their ferment. Hence it is clear that he who does not join living white silver enduring fire with pure silver, that is pure, has chosen no way to whiteness, and he who does not join living red silver enduring fire with pure gold has chosen no way to redness. Therefore, do not weary your body with things it cannot attain, for it will benefit neither itself, nor another, nor the world, until the greater part in the sublime mobile nature rests incorruptibly, as if incorruptible. Now we add a summary of the whole work. Since too much speech overwhelms the understanding of the mind and increases errors, therefore we pass over the entirety of this work briefly as a completion. And it is as follows: take a sufficiently known stone, and with diligence apply the work's effort upon it, the perfection of sublimation, so that the stone is changed inwardly and refined until it reaches the utmost purity of subtlety, and at last becomes volatile. This indeed is the first stage of the administration. From here, when the mode of fixation is formed until it rests in the harshness of fire, thus the work of the moon becomes very white, and the work of the sun very red, where the white is the work of winter, and the red the work of summer. Therefore, it requires a greater sublimation of parts, carried out in its own modes through a greater digestion by decoction, until it takes on a very ruddy color, and in this alone consists the goal of the second degree of perfection. But in the third degree lies the completion of the whole work, and it is that now the fixed stone by means of sublimation modes is made volatile, and the volatile fixed, and the fixed dissolved, and the dissolved fixed again, until it flows and changes in a certain perfecting alteration of sun or moon. Because from the reiteration of the preparation of this third degree results the medicine of alteration and the multiplication of goodness, so that each imperfect body is converted into infinity, into the true sun or moon. Moreover, it also has the effective power to heal every infirmity above all other medicines, for it gladdens the spirit, increases strength, preserves youth, and renews old age, because it does not allow blood to putrefy, nor phlegm to dominate, nor choler to burn, nor melancholy to be exalted excessively. Indeed it multiplies blood beyond measure, purifies the contents of the spirits, and preserves all the limbs of the body. And generally it cures both hot and cold infirmities better than all medicines, for if the sickness be of 1 month's duration, it will heal it in 1 day, and if of 1 year, it heals it in 12 days, but if older and of long duration, it will heal it in 1 month, and will expel all bad humors and bring in good ones. It will also bring love to those to whom it is offered, grant security to those who carry it, boldness, and victory in palaces. In this is completed the greatest secret of secrets of nature, which is above all the precious and most precious things of this world. Sixth Treatise. Title: A Small Treatise on the Philosophical Mercury. Know that the mercury of the philosophers, made from 2 lead substances, performs great operations, namely 1 weight over 60, and when it is extinguished and converted into powder, it works nobler operations, especially upon the fugitive mercury, that is, over 200, and it is converted into pure moon. And if the powder is reddened, it converts mercury into pure sun, and all metals. Know that when the soul is joined to the body is quickly consumed and changed into another form than it was before, because in the first sublimation, the body will be black, in the second more lucid, in the third more so, and so on up to the 15th time, by dissolving and freezing, and in every freezing be careful that the body feels no salt, and then wash it and do it again. If our stone is whitened, it whitens, if it is tinged, it tinges, it itself has spirit and soul, and it also reddens itself, kills itself, and vivifies itself, and there is nothing more wondrous in this world, therefore the philosophers honored it, and when it is whitened, it whitens all bodies, and leads them to temperament, and spirit rubs spirit. Know that our stone is a living thing, for it hardens the soft, and softens all hard things, it melts crystal, and likewise colors it, and first it reduces all bodies to the moon, and afterward to the sun. Know that from everything a salt can be made, and afterward from the salt mercury is made by diverse operations. Dissolve and freeze and make every species with its species, and every kind with its kind, and you will rejoice, for nature delights in its own nature. Know that oil distilled 7 times renders mercury into pure moon, and so it is. Place mercury in some glass vessel over heat, which is quite warm, then add your powder and let it melt. Also know that the stone dissolved thrice and coagulated again rectifies arsenic, sulfur, and mercury. Know that when sulfur is dissolved thrice, it dissolves everything and whatever it wills in 1 hour. And know that many secrets lie in living sulfur. Note that you give the same weight to its soul and to its body in solution and coagulation, until it is fixed and powdery and does not smoke, and this is the best test of all. When the body does not smoke, hold this as certain. Know that the Greeks greatly praised the work of the 4 spirits, and said it was the truest elixir, 1 weight over 100. Know that each regimen must be preserved by itself in the regimen of the stone, namely water, oil, fire, and earth, and when all these are joined together at once, a certain tempered thing results, which performs various operations on imperfect bodies, and likewise on the human body, of which there is no doubt. End of the small treatise on philosophical mercury. Brief but not light. On the Philosopher's Stone. I turned over the stone, and I sat upon it. Into the pit of punishment be cast whoever, whether powerful or foolish, reveals this. But I reveal it to the good, because I have seen many perish in labor, since they could not arrive at the knowledge of the art. In the name of the Lord, take alcabric, and human humor from a healthy vein, and mix them equally, then extract water through distillation, then air through fire, lastly burn the dregs, calcine, and mix equally with the urine of a boy, extract the salt, and you have all the stones of which the philosophers have experienced. For they tint wondrously and cook as much as the nature of fire can no longer do. Likewise, this salt resists mercury when it is imbibed and dried with the first stone, and thus is made the union of the fixed body upon a firm rock. Let no one behold the face of God who, whether powerful or foolish, reveals this. End of the brief and final treatise.